On Downtown Action Committee hearing, May 13th, 2026. Could we kindly start with a roll call?
Dr. Brian Laura.
Present.
Kim Doe.
Present.
Michael Baxt.
Present.
Brian Chagas.
Present.
Roger Jansen.
Present.
Nick Mielich.
Present.
Samuel Grace.
Present.
Veronica Barducci.
Present.
Let the record reflect that Gregory Gabriel is not present.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of minutes. You have in your package April 8th minutes. Does anyone have any comments, corrections, deletions, motion to approve? You can't hear me? Okay, I'll speak a little louder. My apologies. I'm a little under the weather, but I'm getting better.
Put that mic right up next to your lips.
Yeah,
Yeah, right up to your lips. Motion to approve.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, report from City Urban Designer, Ms. Aponte, or Ms. Claudia, either
We
one.
don't have anything to
Nothing
report. We
today?
have a long agenda.
Looks like we got a
today.
big day. We'll get right into it. Perfect. And same with me. I will forego any commentary. Item 5, declaration of ex parte communication. You want to start, Brian? On today's cases,
No.
any ex parte to declare?
No.
No?
None.
None? Kim?
Not at this meeting. I did have ex parte meeting before the workshop, but
Okay.
that doesn't apply here, right?
Well, if it's relative to today's cases, you need to state it.
Yeah, I had a communication with one of the potential future applicants on one of the project downtown, but it will not affect my ability to be impartial today.
Okay. Michael?
I've had a meeting with the Brodsky Group regarding the DMP and Mike Schmidt on behalf of the Downtown Neighborhood Association, but those meetings will not have any impact on my ability to render a impartial decision today.
Okay, thanks. Brian, you got
Yes, I've had discussions prior to the meeting with Brian Seymour from Gunster on CRC case number 2603. It will not impact my decisions here today.
Okay, great. I had ex parte April 28th with informal discussion with staff just regarding the general provisions of the DMPU. On May 11th, discussion with John Roach and Scott Solish on behalf of the Holy Trinity site relative to the proposed changes of the DMPU. Informative discussions will not affect my ability to judge today. Nick?
I've also had a call with Gunster regarding this issue, and that meeting will not have any impact on my ability to judge impartially today.
No ex parte communication.
I had a meeting with John Roach and the team at Gunster regarding the church in downtown, and that communication will not have any effect on my decisions today.
Okay, great, thanks.
And I should just explain, when I say the Brodsky Group, that is the church site. That's the Gunster attorneys
Same one, the
that I met
Gunster,
with.
yeah.
Same people.
Got it. Okay. All right, we'll move into today's hearing, today's cases. Anyone that will be speaking, or if you're going to provide any commentary testimony, please stand to be sworn in. Yes, quasi-judicial. So anyone that's going to speak, make sure you're sworn in. Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. And when you do speak, just kindly step up to the podium and state your name and your address, and we'll make sure we get your 3 minutes of time in. Continue. So we'll get right into today's first case, Downtown Action Committee case 2601. It's a city-initiated request for rezoning, property located at 901 North Flagler Drive, and we'll go ahead and hear from staff. Thank you.
Good morning, Ana Maria Aponte, Development Services Director. Thank you, Board, for being here with us this morning. I know most of you attended the workshop last April 23rd, so I appreciate you coming back. You will hear a lot of the same presentation that we did the last time, but for the benefit of the public, we're gonna repeat, and we hope the discussion will advance. We have 2 cases that we're gonna present to you today. One is Code Revision Case 2603 that is related to the proposed zoning and land development regulations for the downtown master plan. Just to clarify, this is not a quasi-judicial, it's a public hearing for that case. However, we have that case number 2601, that is a rezoning for 2 particular parcels within the downtown, and that's a quasi-judicial. So those 2 cases, we're gonna present them together because they are related, but you will have to do the voting at the end separately. Just to do some introduction. So We have been working on this for quite some time. Have done some process with the approval of this. We're going to present some background. Then Bernard Siskowicz, that is the consultant that has been hired by the city to help us with this process, will do the presentation, and we will have different people from staff and the consultant stepping in to do a portion of the presentation. At the end, of course, comments from the board, and we have also public comments that will be allowed. Just to start, I wanted to explain how this process has been run. We started this process in February last year when, as I say, we hired the consultant, Siskowicz, to help us with this process. Siskowicz is the same team that helped us to do the Downtown Master Plan update in 2007 and 2009. So they are very familiar with the downtown and have seen the process that we have been going through. As part of the kind of engagement process for the update, we have had a steering committee that was members of the committee were selected to support and discuss the proposal. We have had 6 meetings with that group. We have meetings with the mayor and the commissions on one-on-one. We also have a workshop. It's a public meeting. We have visioning discussions. 3 of them took place at the beginning to hear from the community and the public then the main topics of the concerns. And then we have some follow-up meetings with that. We have a big meeting last December. We have separate meetings with the Northwest neighborhood, as this neighborhood is special. It has particular regulations and requires a special attention. So we have different separate meetings with the neighborhood to go through that process. We have a meeting with the Downtown Neighborhood Association, and we have plenty or more than 20 meetings with stakeholders from the communities and the neighbors to attend, to discuss the topics that are at large. As we have been developing the proposal and we are presenting more drafts, so the comments are being raised to staff. I appreciate all the public here today to bring the comments to say this is a process, this is the first public hearing for this process. We're gonna have presentation in front of the Downtown Action Committee, the Planning Board, twice. We're gonna be in front of you in June to present the comprehensive plan changes, and then the public hearings in front of the City Commission. So there are still opportunities to bring comments and discuss. We always are open to receive individual calls and hear from the public what the concerns are, and we continue addressing all those concerns or expressing why we do not agree with the proposals that are being brought up. Just as an introduction, I wanted to just put in context what we are discussing today. The regulation that is in front of you today is only related to the downtown area. The downtown area is subject to the Downtown Master Plan, is around 767 acres, and is the area located primarily between Okeechobee Boulevard, Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard, Flagler Drive, and Australian. So it's a very tight area of the city. It includes around 12,000 people living right now in there, and it's around 500 blocks. It's important to mention this because due to the density and intensity of the downtown and its character as a downtown area, is the area that is scheduled to basically absorb the highest portion of population and employment growth in the city. When we look at the numbers produced by the Southeast Regional Planning Model, we expect up to the year 2050, we're going to have an expected growth of around 9,000 new residents in the downtown area and over 8,000 new employees that are expected to be located in the downtown. That is around 26% of the population growth of the city will be located or is expected to be located downtown. And the same way, 46% of the employment is expected to be located. So this is to put a little bit in context. We have numbers that shows that the expected growth in the next 24 years, we will have around 34,000 new residents. Again, these are projections, numbers. We don't know how, how this is gonna materialize, but it's good to have these numbers in hand. So we know when we're talking about the development of the downtown area, what we need to deal with in the next years. I don't think I have to mention this to anyone, but again, this is the core of the city where we have the highest intense development capacity, the highest number of office buildings that accommodate a big portion of the economic growth of the city. Also, the most significant public spaces for the entire community are located downtown, and as well as the best transportation options that we have for the city. I just want to mention as an introduction also that the downtown, the city was founded in the core of the downtown, and Clematis Street was the main street, the most important street where the commercial activity concentrated since its foundation. And it was vibrant and thriving for the initial portion. However, at some point in the 70s, the downtown declined and suffered kind of an exodus of people with the suburban development, and downtown started to be in a state of disrepair. No many shops were in place. People were not staying here, and was not a pleasant environment. So in the 90s, the community basically created this new vision and new desire to revitalize the downtown area. And with the election of the strong mayor in 1991, a lot of things were put in motion to kind of get where we are right now. So this is a process that has been for a long time in the works. So what the board recommends today, again, is one step more and a step in the process of redeveloping the downtown with the vision of the community. So from that time, we have investment in the downtown took place with the creation of cultural facilities. The downtown master plan was created and adopted in '94, and that's the document that guided the redevelopment of the downtowns since the early '90s. The goal was to really reinforce a context that created a mixed-use downtown with a pedestrian-friendly environment, so the character and how people engage with the street and what the uses were in there was always in the vision, and I think that's what we have been working since the adoption of the master plan. We, at that time in '94 and then in the early 2000s, incentives were adopted to promote the redevelopment of the downtown. So despite the code was created in place, there was like the need to really attract the development to the downtown, and incentives were put in place. So the first one that was done was the residential incentive to allow buildings to increase high if they were bringing residential. It was a big need to attract residential to the downtown, to start establishing a ratio and a mix between residential and non-residential uses to really create the mixed-use environment that was desired. In the early 2000s, also the Transfer of Development Rights program was created that allowed basically, or was directed to protect historic structures in the downtown and allow the unused development capacity to be located on other sites where the additional capacity was desired. So again, targeting development on certain areas where the growth was desired. Then in 2007, we hired Siskovich to help us review the downtown and update it. The concerns at that time was like the development that was happening was producing buildings that were not as, despite they were creating the mixed use, and the environment of pedestrian-friendly, we had some challenges with tall buildings getting too close to the sidewalks, so the public realm was a little bit constrained. So a big push of the master plan update in 2007 and 2009 was to really balance the growth and say, if we are having this growth, how do we create a public realm that is supported of this growth and creates a good quality of life? And that is what it was done. So we moved from a strictly form-based code that was the original code to a FAR-based code, which still allow us to prescribe the form of the buildings, but gave the flexibility to the architects to provide a kind of some quality of architectural design, have the flexibility of set back the buildings in different ways without impacting the development capacity, and create public spaces for the public. We were able to develop with that, the development community responded, and new buildings were developed, creating public spaces, clearing new dynamics, and really enhancing that vision that was originally created in '94. These are some examples of the buildings that have been produced. Again, some with incentives, other ones without incentives, but creating kind of the vibrant mixed-use district or downtown that we have right now. And just to finalize this section, introductory section, I want to show you in this table how much development has been occurring in the downtown since 1994. So we have really a lot of development happening with the introduction of new residential, commercial, hotels, and that has represented a big growth for the city. So now I'm going to transfer to Bernard Siskowicz, but before I do that, I fail to recognize the staff that has been working so hard on this proposal. I have to thank Chris, Kimberly, and Claudia Baben. They have been amazing, working endless hours with the Siskowicz team on this really, really long Zoom meetings, trying to really nail down every little detail of the regulation. The presentation that you're going to see today is just a glimpse of all the thought that is put behind. And of course, we need a little bit more of that, also based on the comments that we received today and the comments that we will receive from the public on the next hearings. So I'm going to transfer now to Mr. Siskowicz to go with the full presentation.
Great. Thanks, Ana Maria.
Good morning, everybody. In the spirit of giving thanks, I'd also like to recognize Surya Yafar and Darius Avila of my firm that have, they're really the stars. We've worked very diligently with staff. We've had, as Anna says, so many meetings, and this has been a very extensive effort, and we're really excited to be here today to go through this again. I remember we had the workshop. Some of these slides will be repetitive, but we're also trying today to answer some questions. So I'll go through the basics, and then we'll continue with the presentation, and then Darius will come up and go through the specifics in more detail of the different categories. So we all know how much West Palm has grown. We're very proud to have been a part of that, and we know that there are still many challenges ahead of us. We have heard from many people that transportation mobility has been an ongoing issue, and that is part of the challenges. The housing affordability, of course, as people come into the city and have jobs, increasingly better and higher paying jobs, the affordability is by definition becoming more challenging in the core because that becomes the most desirable place to live. We have incredible access to transit, but we don't have yet a mobility that allows us to move easily, and we think that this needs to be also part of the overall project. And I think it goes without saying there's a tremendous amount of development pressure. And we've taken all of these things into account, realizing that not only are we dealing with the downtown, but we're drawing people, in our view, from as far north as Riviera and as far south as what's it called? I always have a Lake Worth Beach. I forgot they changed the name. I still think of it as Lake Worth. And then obviously to the west, western regions of the county. So what we want is a downtown for everyone, and we have been successful doing that so far. So we have developed these zoning recommendations, but the zoning recommendations, excuse me, are based on the vision. The vision document is still in process. We've been looking at the overall downtown with specific objectives in mind. From the standpoint of culture and character, we want to protect the existing neighborhoods. We know there's development pressure, so we want to make sure that the buildings that come out of it are thinner, that they allow light to penetrate the street, that we have the appropriate building methodology that reinforces all of that. Excuse me. The TOD is really the area we see the most opportunity for redevelopment. We want to preserve the character of Clematis. and make sure that Clematis ends up in a really spectacular way as it approaches the water. And from a transportation and mobility, we're looking at transportation objectives that include the Okeechobee Boulevard, that deal with the convention center, parking garage as a potential location for parking, getting the cars off the street into another mode. We know we have a tremendous amount of traffic that comes through the city that goes to Palm Beach and also north-south. We are looking for Sapodilla to become what we call a slow street, which would be the place where the bikes and the alternative mode of travel would logically go, because we don't really want to mix them with the cars and the buses and other forms of mobility. And we're looking at Flagler Drive and a larger park system, a better park system. And then from the standpoint of the community development, we're looking at opportunities to reinforce whenever possible that new development would also, as a result of the bonuses that we've been talking about, would develop in affordable housing and also funding sources that would reinforce that. We also continue to want to include mixed uses. Excuse me, I don't know what's up with that. That would allow for, as the project and the city grows, there will be a continued need for active uses at the ground level and the same types of things that have been in the core of the city throughout. So one of the implications of growth is we need to take all of the growth, all of the quality of life, and as it moves into the west particularly, we need to imagine the west more like the eastern edge of the city, where the sidewalks are wide enough, where people can see shops, they can have cafes. So all of this is part of the introduction into the western edge. And then finally, open space, because as the city grows, there becomes an ever-increasing need for open space, for wider sidewalks, for tree canopy, for all of these types of things that make a livable city. And we think that that's also a very big part. So when you look at the way that cities grow, what we've discovered everywhere that we work is that we have everything from disinvested neighborhoods all the way to highly developed, highly culturated neighborhoods. We don't always find every contingent part in every place that we work, but in this downtown, we do have the full spectrum. We have areas where we're trying to find ways to have reinvestment, to deal with neighborhood redevelopment in a way that protects the historical culture, but also allows for more housing and opportunity, like the Northwest District. And we also have really well-defined areas like the core of downtown, where there's no problem getting new development and no problem finding new people to come, to move here, to want to be here, and everything in between. So the tools that we use are really different according to the neighborhood. So the different districts that we've already established almost 20 years ago, those districts have not changed. We also are not changing the base development of those districts. So everything you're going to hear today is about the increases that are being proposed in the form of bonuses, and Anna Maria will go through the different types of bonuses. But I want to emphasize one thing. The districts that we created have not changed, and the base FAR of those districts is exactly the same as it has always been. We are dealing with only the additional opportunity that will require payment and quality of life incentives, giving back to the community in order to get those bonuses. So this is not a wholesale zoning change. This is a change of the aspects of bonus. Now, why are we doing that? Because we know that there are so many people that are coming here. It's obvious. As I mentioned during the workshop, most cities want one Class A office building to be built in their neighborhood. Class A being highest quality and an exemplar for growth and quality in a city is when you start seeing Class A office buildings. High ceilings, highly amenitized, very modern, very forward-reaching. I think we have, I might have the number wrong, we have 8 since we were here. When we came here the first time, we created an incentive for height and FAR to incentivize one Class A office building, one hotel, because West Palm had neither. This has been more than a success story. It has been an invigorated, an overachievement of success story in a sense. And it's not stopping. Based on the research that we've been doing and the things that Anna Maria has just said, there's a lot of people wanting to come here. But it's not just a segmentation of people, it's the broad spectrum. It's Cleveland Hospital, it's the new university, it's technology, it's highly paid people, it's neighborhoods that want to protect themselves from change. So we have a lot of competing interests. So we go back to the toolbox. What is the toolbox? Well, we want to make sure that we have sidewalks that are really wide, that we have open spaces, that we have mixed uses, that we have active activities. So as the city grows, it's not just that we have more people, it's that we have a better city. Now that's the rub, because everyone might have a different idea of what constitutes a better city. For some people, it might be the city that doesn't change. For some people, it might be new opportunity for a better cultural scene. It might be better restaurants. It might be better parks. It might be better schools. It might be things like bringing in a university. These are qualitative judgments that are part of a vision. So it's not written in stone. This is the best effort at trying to understand how to project the future, because we are not soothsayers. Last time we did this, we hit it pretty well. The city has really become spectacular. I think one of the best in Florida. And when you walk down the sidewalk, these are things people don't really pick up on. We created a way, even though the property alignments in the city have been very strange over historically, we created a way to ensure that every primary street has a sidewalk that's 16 feet wide. A lot of cities I work in, the sidewalks are 5 feet wide. And they have 40 and 50-story buildings, they have whatever they may have, but 5 feet wide means if I'm walking, maybe there's room for one person next to me. If I have 16 feet wide, there's room for 4 people to walk. There's room to plant a tree. There's room to deal with water issues and irrigation issues and all of that. So it's not the zoning code alone that you're looking at. It's the idea of how do you make a city that will actually function when all these people come. So this is the benefit of looking backwards, but it's also the benefit of learning those lessons and making sure that we're looking forwards. So we're looking also at incentives, because we want for increased density, increased height, that we make sure that anyone who is in the development realm that wants that is going to give something back. So we're requiring affordable housing to be built contiguously with any other kind of housing. We're requiring that they pay for the additional area and for the additional height. They don't have to pay for anything in the base. If you want to build the base is the same as it's always been. If you do it as of right, you have a very easy path. But if you want to take advantage of the bonuses and you want to build the increases in density and height, not only do you have to give back quality, you have to also give back some money, and you have to be aware, and this is the really important point, I think, that in order to reach the height and the density, that's not all going to be in a tower and you're going to ignore the street. In order to get to the floor area maximum, you're going to have to build what we call liner units, which means that the garage will be screened with apartments. You'll see people living and actively participating in the city. You're going to have to limit the amount of cars that you can have in a podium. You're going to have to do a whole lot of qualitative things in order to have the benefit of the density and the height. So what does that mean in plain English? I know that Anna Maria and her staff are going to go through grief for the next years because everybody's going to come in and say, I'm entitled to the maximum. Why don't you let me do the maximum? Well, in order to get to the maximum, there's a whole lot of other things you have to do. So you're not entitled to the maximum. The whole point of this approach has been you can build up to the maximum, and as you build more, you have to give more. And you're not necessarily entitled to ever reach those maximums unless you do the other things. So the base FAR remains, the base height remains, everything else is extra. So when we go through the process of dealing with the vision, which we'll take you through briefly, and we already have, I think, at the workshop, that is what we use as the basis for the zoning and the basis for the development review that groups like yours will have to deal with, and the quality of life will be the outcome. So I just want you to know that this effort has taken the form that it has because West Palm Beach is a highly desirable place. Now, why do I say that? Well, because in a sense, everyone in the city, especially leadership, has inherited. It's like being a trust fund baby. Your city is like a trust fund baby, in my view. Why? Because you have incredible natural resources. The Intracoastal is incredible. You've got Clear Lake to the west. And you also have what nobody else has. You have 2 railroad stations that deal with passengers now, which we never thought would happen when we did this in '07. And you have an infrastructure that is set up to receive what's happening. So in other words, you've been endowed with a richness that's physical, that's beautiful, that has infrastructure, that has transportation, that is now across from the billionaire island that people call it. You're the financial center of so much that's going on. And remarkably, you have the infrastructure in transportation to support it. What you also have are some of the problems that come with it, which we need to resolve. But the point is that we want to direct the growth to the right places. The fact that this wave is coming is undeniable. And you can resist it, but you will not be able to stop it. It's coming. It's here. So the purpose of this has been and is to try to direct growth where it makes sense, to protect the neighborhoods that need the protection the most, to use this opportunity to take what might be ordinary and make it extremely high level in terms of design and accessibility and public participation, to create more open spaces, to ensure that whatever happens has a direct public benefit, and that whatever we're doing is going to be improving the quality of what's here. So just to prove the point, the slide on the left is the existing planning areas. The slide on the right is essentially the same. We did find one block in the PP district and Nora that we're converting, and Darius will talk about that. But in terms of the overall, the structure of the code remains the same. The framework that was established is still the same. The zoning is based on 3 planning areas. and that the rest of the city we're leaving pretty much alone. There's one small site in Lofton and Providencia Park that we're proposing to change the district because the nature of the site was really maybe incorrectly anticipated. So we're making that as a correction. From the standpoint of the urban regulations, the slide on the left and the slide on the right shows you that it's exactly the same districts. We're strengthening existing neighborhoods, and we're trying to leave alone those that don't need much to happen so that we can compress. So that's the other point I wanted to make, which is when we say the downtown pretty much feels like everything east of the FEC and City Place. The west, the TOD, is still very much like it used to be. We think that's the area that we're going to see the most development, and that's where we've paid the most attention. Now, last time we were here, there were questions about what are we doing about the small lots. So let's make this comment really clear. It is our supreme desire to try to prevent as much as possible the aggregation of full blocks. Okay? So we have embedded in this code, and you should ask questions about it, the opportunity for small property owners to do development, for middle-sized owners and for large. So the code actually is conceptualized and literally written so that there are certain opportunities that can be changed when you have a small lot, parking, setbacks, things like that, that would not be the same as if you have an aggregation of a full lot. So we really would love to see the continuation of the growth of the city lot by lot. The problem is you can't really build very much on small lots. But what you can do is add a lot of character and have individual opportunity of property owners. So we just want to emphasize that that is something that we embrace. We're not at all trying to change that by definition. On the other hand, the big challenges are what happens when a full lot is aggregated? How do you retain the street character when somebody is building a massive development that takes up a whole lot? And we've paid a lot of attention to that aspect, as you will see. So the two main zoning updates are the incentive height and FAR calibration. By that we mean we've left the base alone. We've been messing with FAR and height in terms of the bonuses. And as I've mentioned already, that when you go for the incentive, you have a litany of items that have to be provided back that will be public benefits. So the base FAR has been the same, and the overall development capacity in the base FAR has remained the same. If you want to do a project according to the base, there's really no change for you. Growth is already occurring. It's going to be continuing. These are some of the projects that have come underway. Where is the new growth encouraged? So we are really identifying on the screen, you see 1, 2, and 3. You see the white gap in the middle. We've been very diligent about trying to retain the character of clematis, not allow much in the form of new intensity or new height. We want that to be the traditional main street of the city. It is and always has been that. But as you go around it to the periphery, we think there's a lot of opportunity for the opportunity for new development and for the continuation of what was there. Now, when we get to the area of 1, that's the TOD QBD core, which is surrounded by transit. It's a huge opportunity. That's where the new university is coming. That's where Cleveland Clinic is coming. And as I've mentioned in many of the public meetings, one of the reasons that we want to incentivize this area, aside from it being the logical place for a lot of development, is to see if we can get the governmental facilities to become targets for acquisition and change to be compressed, because in West Palm, in the early days, there was so much land available, people built sprawling two-level, three-level, single-level governmental facilities with surface parking. As we know, we have government that's shrinking as opposed to growing. There will be more people as more population comes, but there's also a need for property to happen. And we can, by example, aggregate 2 or 3 very large surface parking lots and put them in a structure and liberate a lot of land. That land could go for development, that land could go for new parks, for more open space, so that as the western edge of the city develops, it develops in a way that is more similar to what you see at City Place or some of the other places in other cities where we have open spaces, we have landscaping. So we're trying to reuse that land, which is now really mostly used for surface parking. On the waterfront, we have existing buildings that are 15 stories, 12 stories. We have some that are small, but the waterfront is already mid-rise to high-rise in many locations. So we're saying, okay, if we're going to do that, then let's make sure the new development is very narrow and that you cannot build a wall-to-wall cityscape of buildings that literally cover the entire waterfront, with the only gaps being the streets. I know that there is a community of some people that feel like this is a big issue, and for them, I admit that it is. And it's really tied into the idea of a redefinition of a new waterfront promenade, of a new waterfront park, of basically changing the kind of the pearl in the middle of the city that has the most iconic component part. West Palm, in our view, as we see it over the next 30 years, will become an even more incredible, more desirable place to be. So we think the waterfront is always the iconic place where the community gathers. So we're saying if development happens, as it does eventually happen, rather than have it be through people that come to you and the commission for exceptions to the code and variances and all the things that go along with it, let's define it. Our objective here is not to hold development back or to ruin neighborhoods. We're not in the business of doing either of those. We're in defining how development can happen so that it can address both of those issues. So in our minds, unlike other cities where the zoning code of the waterfront is the same as every other block in the city, this waterfront code says that there's going to be 40% of the frontage of any building built on the first layer of the city that has to be free and open. You cannot put the tower there. We're going to force people into thinner and more light and air down to the street, so that the rest of the city can also take advantage of that sense of being next to the Intracoastal. It's an art and a science. We're doing our best to make it work. We're not telling people they should do it. The base FAR is still 5 stories. If somebody wants bonuses, they're going to have to do a lot to get that. That is not a simple entitlement. Neither is it what we're saying is very important to underscore, that we're not saying that this is happening tomorrow. We've been tasked with a master plan till 2050. Now, when Anna Maria is talking about all the new people and all of this happening, this is not happening overnight. This is a master plan for the downtown core overall. And look at what's happened in 20 years since we were here. We're looking at another 20 years in front of us. The economy is always going to be a major issue. The success of what's been happening is a major issue. The transportation and mobility issues are still going to have to be resolved. So we're saying if all of that goes and it comes into place, how do we make sure that the city that's built is the city that we want? And that is really the core issue of all of these zoning districts. You're going to see that the bonuses change, the form and opportunities of the buildings will change by district. And when you put it all together, what we're anticipating is a city that still has character and that still is very livable, and that it just gets better and better. In terms of the height, I've already addressed most of that. We're allowing change in density and height in primarily these 3 zones. As Darius takes you through each one, you'll understand. The one thing that you should know is that because we are architects, we have tested probably every single block, so that when we write the zoning code, we're now testing, as an architect hired for the project would, to see how does this floor area fit? Does it fit? Do we have too much floor area? Because then people are going to complain that they can't fit it all. Do we have too much height? If we go to the maximum height, do we get to the maximum floor area? So if we do, then you're going to have a lot of liners. You as the committee, you're going to see that, and this is important for you, I believe, that people come in asking for hardship or asking for variance. In order to get to the maximums, you have to do a lot of active uses, not just on the ground floor, up the garage. We're looking at how do we manage the amount of parking so that we have a sweet spot. We don't want to have a balloon of a parking structure. We want to make sure it's small enough so that it still fits within the context of the city. So we've been studying these things now for over a year, and we've put it all together. But I want you to know that it's not based on a number we made up. Some of these numbers have turned out to be quite specific, and you'll see that as you entertain those sub-district issues. And please feel free to ask us or staff. They've been side by side with us. We've taken them through so many of the iterations that we've gone through in order to arrive at it. We've been making changes up to the last minute because we realized that in this particular area we needed to tweak it to make it a little smaller because maybe we had too much wiggle room in there. We've always made sure that in terms of the floor areas, the heights, the ground floor height of an active use, that we have enough space so that we get quality, we get state-of-the-art, that we get building footprints that are not going to be overwhelming in size, that we institute enough open space, that we protect the width of sidewalks, that we have room to plant trees. All of this stuff has been taken into account, and with that, I'm going to turn it back to Anna Maria to take you through it. We look forward to the questions you're going to have. Darius is going to take you through more detail, but I really wanted to make sure that you get the flavor of what we've been doing. Thank you so much.
No, that's great. Thanks for the summary. Very, very helpful.
Thank you, Bernard. The next part of the presentation will be split between myself and Jessica Keller. We want to address 2 main concerns have been expressed by the community and by the board at the workshop. To go over a little bit of the reality of the numbers and what is happening. One of the main issues that we have heard is the concern about capacity. And Mr. Siskowicz explained just before how the incentives are allocated and what is the idea of how to guide the development to the areas where we wanted. So that is linked to what is the capacity of the downtown, right? That is like this fuzzy number that can be built and how do we did this. So when we analyze this, if we take every site in the downtown and wipe it out, all the buildings are gone, and everybody is built to the maximum allowed capacity by the current code, by a base, not with incentives, just the base, that gives us a total development capacity of around 44 million square feet of development. That, again, very theoretically, right? That's not happening. That has not happened. We have buildings that remain and buildings that are replaced over time. From that capacity, up to this point, we have developed 21 million square feet. And that is with everything that has happened from day one in the city up to, I think the numbers, these are 2025. So we still have other numbers, but 2025. So that gives us 21.2 million square feet that had been built in the residential, in the downtown. That includes the single-family residential houses that are in Providencia Park, in Presford Park, in the Northwest neighborhood, but also the high-rise office buildings that have been built recently. We have, and this is also, we do assumptions to go to these numbers because they're really difficult to deal with. But for residential, we have the number of residential units. So we just assume each unit is 1,000 square feet and multiply, and that gives us kind of some numbers. The non-residential, we have 10.6 million, and then we have the hotels also assuming certain square footage per room, and we arrive to those numbers. One of the things that is very good that has been happening and has been progressing since we started tracking all this is as the downtown with the guidance since the downtown master plan in '94 was intended to be a mixed-use district. So we have what we call the ratio between residential and non-residential. That right now is a 0.9 ratio. That means that we have a balanced downtown. We have substantial amount of residential uses and also substantial amount of commercial uses. And that is the best scenario because that means we don't have everybody driving downtown for work or everybody living here and going somewhere else for work. So you have that mix of uses. Some people live downtown, work downtown. Some people work downtown and live somewhere else. Some people live downtown and work somewhere else. So that utilizes the best, makes the best option, not only for transportation, but also for commercial activity because you have a 24-hour downtown. You don't have kind of hours where everybody is gone, like used to happen in the 70s. That was one of the problems. So we have been successful on achieving the goal on creating a mixed-use downtown with this square footage. So based on this number, that means that if we don't have any incentives, we still have 23 million square feet of capacity to do in the downtown, assuming the rest of the parcel, so everybody else is developed to the maximum allowed. Again, not what happens, but just to put the numbers in the context. Since we did the master plan in '94, the capacity was assigned, then we established certain incentives. So what we have been doing in the past is to allow the incentives that were created that have been utilized up to this point. We have allowed the transfer of development rights. What does that mean? That in the areas where we have target additional capacity that we want projects to come in because of different reasons, like Mr. Siskowicz mentioned, the current master plan had an incentive for attracting office, and it was specifically located in the Quadrow Garden District to try to make the connection between Clematis and City Place. That's where 360 was built. They used an incentive. How did they build it? They transferred development rights. They purchased the square footage from a historic structure that was not maximizing its potential and relocated in this. So this program, the TDR program, was intended to protect historic structures and create urban open space. It has been very successful. Since it was created in 2002, we have the original estimate of, if we take, we basically identify in the downtown all properties that had potential to be designated, that had some historic value for the community that we wanted to protect. And then since that time, 2 million square feet have been transferred. And I just have in the screen one of the examples. St. Anne's is one of the most beloved churches in the downtown. They were the first building to designate the building as historic or redesignate it, then transfer their unused development capacity. That means that they are protected, is a structure that is protected, and the owner, as a compensation for that, it's allowed to sell their unused development capacity. The unused development capacity of St. Anne's was transferred to the 2 City Plaza, and that's why that building was allowed to go from 15 stories to 20 stories. That was even with the original master plan, not even the version from 2007. form-based, did not have open spaces on the ground as we have, but it was allowed to increase the development capacity. So up to this point, this is what we have been doing. So the overall capacity of the downtown has not been increased. It has remained the same because any incentives or any buildings that have been going higher or more intense have been just transferring capacity from historic structures to the desired location. So this is important to explain because we have reached a point where despite the numbers show that we have still 1.5 million square feet of TDRs that can be transferred, those owners of those properties are not interested in selling. So if you ask any developer right now trying to build a building that utilizing even the existing incentive areas, those TDRs are very difficult to come by. And some of the developers that are working in projects right now, what they did is they bought them before. They are holding them because they were scarce. There are not that many historic properties that have not been designated. There are some smaller structures, like in the Northwest, for example. There's a lot of property owners that have benefited from the program. They have designated their structures. They have done repairs to the structures. That was the goal of the program. Fix the windows, fix the roof, improve the structure, being secure, protected it, and then being able to sell those square footage, and those are used by a developer. So I mentioned this because what we are proposing with this update is creating another mechanism of increasing development capacity because the TDRs are no longer available or they are very, very scarce. So what happens in theory now, we have these areas that we have proposed as eligible for incentives. On the left-hand side, you have the areas where are eligible for incentive. The big of the areas, as Mr. Siskowicz explained, are the TOD and the core of the downtown. The residential districts on the north are not really subject to incentives, except the Nora district that has some, but the core is like where we want the development to occur. Then we compare that with what happens, the map on the right. You can see the black are the parcels that are already developed, and we don't think anything's gonna happen. Then you have the yellow are the sites that are vacant right now or are surface parking lots. And then the ones that are not colored are sites that are potential for redevelopment. Some of them have structures, so it's kind of we created a scenario, right? This site maybe could get redeveloped. They have a building, but maybe they can add another building. Maybe they can demolish what they have and redevelop. But again, it's kind of scenarios, it's a speculation. But if you look at this map, you can see the large area where surface parking lots exist and land that is prime for redevelopment is, again, the area of the TOD. That's where the biggest incentives are. So again, if we do these theoretical calculations and we take all the area that is yellow and gray that has vacant surface parking or potential for redevelopment within the core of the downtown that is subject to incentives, you're talking about an additional 6.8 million square feet of development. But as I showed you before, in the last 20 years, we have only built 2 million square feet of development with TDRs. So these numbers, despite they look big in some instances, is kind of that theoretical number. If we develop those parcels that are indicated in this map as yellow and gray as a potential development by right, and they utilize the incentive to the maximum, it will take us around 50 years with the rate of development that we have right now. That in the last 8 years, we have been developing around 400,000 square feet of development. If we use that is an intense development. It's not that what's happened from the beginning, but it's it will take us more than 50 years to occupy all these parcels with that degree of development. Will it happen? No, because that's not the way it works. It's different. A lot of these parcels will not get developed. They are not all gonna get developed to the maximum. And they are not gonna get developed at the same time. And that is what is important. It is a process and it takes a long time. So what Mr. Siskowicz was referring is like, we put the rules in place to guide the development to the areas where we think is more appropriate. And that's the part of it. Now I'm going to transfer it to Jessica Keller. She's going to talk about mobility because that is another of the big topics of discussion. Oh, well, I have one slide. One of the important points that this was mentioned before, but we want to reiterate, the additional capacity is what it gives us additional public benefits. Without incentives, we are not able to obtain the affordable housing that we are all looking for. We're not able to obtain expanded open spaces. We cannot support transit, and we cannot increase all that flexibility that we want. So the base is what the property owners have by right. Only when we offer something, we can ask for something in return. So when they develop the 5 stories that they have by right, it's very difficult for them to carve out an open space because the numbers will not work. It's very difficult to ask for affordable housing because they have limited development capacity. Only when we offer additional capacity, and again, guided to those areas where we think is appropriate, we can ask for those benefits that are the public benefit. So that's just to put it in context. How more or less we want is up for discussion, and we have a proposal, and the board will make a recommendation about it. But now I'm going to transfer it to, oh, well, I have more. Sorry about that. So just to go over a little bit how the incentives work. So this is, so right now the proposal is offering the additional development capacity. It can be acquired through CDRs, if they already have it, or if they have other historic structures that they identify and they can acquire the TDRs, the program is still suggested to remain in place. Even there are some historic structures that still are there, so we would like to designate, so the developers can still engage on that process of acquiring the TDRs. If the TDRs are not available, we are creating what we're calling city development rights, where they can pay for those development rights. Instead of paying right now, I think the market rate is $17 per square foot for TDRs to a private owner. They can pay the city the same $17 per square foot, and then the city will use that money for different public benefits. One, the intention was to direct it to mobility, so the additional capacity generates more money to invest on mobility options for the entire community. Maintenance of public spaces. And then in particular cases like the Flagler waterfront, the intention was to direct the additional funding to a conservation fund to maintain the waterfront park. So this is a graphic that shows how it works. In addition to paying for the TDRs or the CDRs, every development utilizing incentive will have to set aside 20% of the additional bonus as a workforce affordable housing provision. How does that work? They have basically 20% of the additional development capacity has to be set aside and provided for units for families with income between 60 and 120% of the area median income. They have 3 options. They can provide the units on site if they are a residential project. That's a good option for them. They can also provide the units off-site, and I'm going to go over what are the areas that we have identified where off-site can be provided, or they can pay for the units, pay for the square footage. The intention is the payment in lieu is the most expensive of the options because our best option is that the developer that knows how to do it build the units and they are leased to the public. For off-site, we have identified some areas outside the downtown, so they can do the units in the downtown, so on their own property or on another site downtown, or there are some areas outside the downtown where the units could be located. We have the Jefferson Terminal, the area north of Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard all the way to Norwood, and the Broadway Corridor as the 3 areas. We have heard some comments regarding the expansion of the off-site options. That's something that we can explore at this point. These locations are linked to the new transit system that the city is putting in place. So now I'm going to transfer to Jessica.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jessica Keller, the Parking and Mobility Administrator. I want to talk about 3 key initiatives that support the update as it relates to mobility and transportation. And the first one is the launch of, or the relaunch of a new mobility service. Previously, we had the trolley for many, many years, long before I arrived in the city of West Palm Beach. There was then a stopgap service that provided on-demand service in the yellow area that's on the map. That provided access to approximately 35,000 people. It also was composed of a fixed route circulator limited to downtown, very small area. The program is going to be relaunched the end of this summer and will cover the green area that you see on the map and provide access to 100,000 people. That's 100,000 people that live, work, and visit here today. And the new system is structured in a way that it can respond and scale to additional growth that is coming to the city of West Palm Beach. The new service will have expanded service hours. Currently, it's from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. The new service will go from 6 a.m. As late as midnight in order to support all types of workers. It will be modern. It's going to be composed of a high-frequency fixed route program that's prioritized to move the most number of people, and it will also be composed of on-demand service. Excuse me. As I mentioned, it's scalable, and over time, we will be introducing AV transit. These are not your Waymos. These are transit vehicles that carry more people per vehicle. So the system is designed to reduce circling for parking in our garages and on street. It's designed to have people choose this service. I can confidently say to you that the program that's going to be launched here in the city of West Palm Beach will be unlike anything that you've seen anywhere in the country. And for me to make a claim like that is a really big deal because I would hate to have to walk back on that. But the wait times and the frequency of service are unmatched. This is some concept vehicles that were presented as part of the proposal of this selected firm. We're currently in the cone of silence, so I'm limited about what exactly I can talk to, but this is a public record and was part of the proposal. We're focusing on the customer experience, the connectivity that we need in order to keep the city moving. It has to be easy, and we are making it accessible to all types of people. The second element that supports the mobility of the downtown update is the mobility fee. The mobility fee is new to us. Previously, over the past number of decades, all mobility fees or traffic impact fees, transportation impact, whatever you want to call them, the county was collecting them from the city of West Palm Beach and building infrastructure elsewhere. The money was not being reinvested in transportation infrastructure here in the city of West Palm Beach. That's now changed. The city of West Palm Beach is collecting the mobility impact fee, and it is over the next through 2050, we will have just in the downtown nearly 25 miles of improvements, which are multimodal in nature. So it is roadway capacity for vehicles, bicycling capacity for people who bike, walking capacity. We will be improving 13 intersections and 2 implementation projects. An implementation project is like what I just talked about, the mobility service that will be relaunching at the end of the summer. Now, how this is important to us is that we are looking at this in a way that we can move around using various modes. We're not building a city where every single person drives. If we were building that kind of city, then we would be gridlocked right now. And while some people may say we are gridlocked right now, we currently have excess capacity. We do have points in the day in certain locations in the city where you are not moving as if it's an open roadway, but they're very, very small points in time. If we look to our neighbors in the south, Miami, that's going from the city of Coral Gables all the way to Aventura, they have exceeded their capacity. So we have room for growth here by expanding our transportation network. The third element I want to talk about was transportation demand management. So we can build the infrastructure. The question is, how do we know that people will not just choose to drive everywhere? And that's where transportation demand management strategies come into play. So the concept is, or the idea, is that we are looking to to implement a 25% mode shift from today. So we have X number of people driving today. We want to take 25% over the course of time and shift them to an alternative mode. Those modes being the mobility service that I just discussed. The construction of low stress networks. I don't like to talk about bike lanes anymore because bike lanes are not a low stress way to move around. We want separated infrastructure, people that aren't driving, aren't riding their bikes next to vehicles, next to people walking, but we're building a low stress network to keep everyone safe. Excuse me. So a lot of this needs to be incentivized. You work with your applicants to incentivize them to shift people to the other modes. That's done through transit pass incentives, providing bicycle parking, a lot of things that I'm sure you probably have heard about before. But you work through that with your applicants in order to encourage movement to another mode of transportation. And I'm sure you have plenty of questions. I have lots of answers when that time comes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jessica.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Daris Avila, I'm part of the consulting team. So I'm going to walk you through some of the details, as Bernard had mentioned, from the design standards and the recommendations that we're making and requirements that we're making for some of these districts, for the districts and sub-districts. But first, I want to mention that part of this update is, and reiterate something that Bernard had mentioned, that an important part of this update is that flexibility does not mean unlimited development, and that the code specifies and establishes clear limitations. The first one is that variances shall not be granted based on the inability to maximize development potential. The second is that incentives shall never exceed the defined building envelope or maximum FAR. So another major focus of our standards, or the way we develop the standards and requirements, is how do we protect the downtown character? Throughout this process, we heard from the community that they support continued investment in downtown, but they also want to make sure that we protect the uniqueness of the downtown character. What does that mean? This includes the active uses, the walkable streets, high quality public spaces, shades, architectural character, etc. So Bernard mentioned a little bit about this, about the small lots. We are developing these standards based on the 3 different categories of lot sizes. So in order to avoid that a development pattern only works for lots that are assembled as large sites, we have different development approaches for these smaller lots, particular sites that are under 50,000 square feet, as shown in the graphic on the left side. So for these smaller sites, parking requirements are reduced or eliminated under certain conditions. Building footprints are larger than the other lot sizes. Higher FAR that incentivizes the development pattern. For most cases, there's no public open space requirements for these lots. And then architectural treatment are allowed on lots with frontages or specific frontages, and it depends on the district where this is located. We also heard throughout this process the issues related to residential loading, that there is no requirement right now in the existing code. So as part of the code, it's very straightforward. We are introducing residential loading and residential and lodging loading into this new proposed code. And it basically mentions that it needs to be internally located and visually screened from the street. And this includes the vehicular maneuvering. For the off-street loading berth, it's all related to the lot size or the development scale. And the table on the right, you can see how the residential lodging size varies depending on the unit the unit size or the unit numbers of the development. We are allowing some flexibility on how the loading berths can be configured, including sharing loads opportunities and alternative berth arrangements approved by the city. So one of the major themes throughout the downtown process was improving the pedestrian experience and creating a more connected public realm. So to support this vision, the zoning update revises and expands the downtown street hierarchy system. So you've heard over and over throughout this presentation how there's a lot of incentive happening throughout the downtown. With this incentive, that means that you're gonna have more residents walking through the streets, you're gonna have more activities, more people interacting in the streets. So that means the public realm needs to be improved to match what's coming into the city. So in some instances, in a lot of these areas and districts that there's gonna be higher or is targeted higher intensity, we are changing the designation of the streets to primary pedestrian street, which means you're gonna have wider sidewalks, more active use requirements, which in turn will improve the public realm character of the streets on these areas. So the map on the left shows the existing street classification, and on the right shows the proposed street classification. So streets like Evernia, Fern, the completion of Fern, Zapodilla Avenue, and Olive Avenue have been changed to primary pedestrian street, allowing for what we're just saying, these streets are mostly located in those targeted incentive or targeted high intensity areas that was discussed before from Bernard. Open space is also another standard that we need to look at when we're starting to see all of this intensity happening in the downtown. So with more intensity, higher open space requirements will happen. Larger projects must contribute more open space. We're also increasing the minimum street canopy requirements, and we're introducing a vegetated area requirement into the code. We're establishing a minimum on-site pervious surface requirement, and in turn, this improves the public realm as the downtown grows. So this graphic here starts to illustrate how the zoning update begins integrating the resiliency and green infrastructure strategies directly into the public realm framework. One of the most important ideas behind this approach is responding to the downtown's topography, particularly the ridge line that happens north-south in the downtown area. And then we also acknowledge that the water moves differently throughout the grid that the downtown has. So for east-west streets, the emphasis is on conveyance and filtration through elements like vegetative swales. And then on north-south streets, the emphasis is in capturing and recharging through bioretention cells and rain gardens. So when we start talking about the standards related to active use, if a parking garage extends beyond the podium level in areas where no conditional setbacks, when there are no conditional setbacks required, then the development should be required 80% active use above the podium. And then in turn, when there's a conditional setbacks, there will not be a required active use above the podium. So in other words, if the garage becomes more visible within the building mass, the project must incorporate active uses in order to protect the character fronting the edge of the street. And Bernard talked a little bit about that before. Another standard that we're looking into when doing this proposal is related to the tower length. We want to make sure that the tower is limited to avoid wall-like buildings and to be able to maintain views throughout the downtown. So and improve the light and air throughout the downtown. So for residential towers only, we're introducing a new tower length requirement of 200 feet. And there's a flexibility of 300 feet for buildings that are in a corner building, an average of 300 feet. And this applies consistently throughout the entire, across all of the districts. As it relates to the parking requirement, areas that have availability of alternative parking options or that are in close proximity to transit corridors or major street corridors, there's going to be a 25% reduction to the existing parking requirement, and the area shown in red will be the targeted area for this 25% reduction. There are no changes in existing parking in the area that is highlighted in gray, and this is because they're not necessarily in close proximity to transit options or alternative parking options, or because they already have a lower requirement in parking options compared to what we're proposing. So this reduction supports the mobility and shared parking strategies that the city is currently going through. So that was one of the reasons that we started to introduce this 25% reduction. Above ground level setback strategies. The idea of having a ground level setback strategy is to control the building mass as the tower goes up. So in order to protect the character and the pedestrian environment, the idea is that we can protect the scale of the street as the pedestrian walks through the sidewalk. So the podium aligns with the street, but the tower needs to step back on certain streets. So important streets that require a deeper setbacks or require a setback are the ones that we want to preserve this character, such as Dixie Highway, Clematis Street, Fern Street, Rosemary Avenue, Zapodila Avenue, and Olive Avenue. Bernard touched on this a little bit earlier, but we're also introducing standards on the Flagler Waterfront District that relates us to create a view corridor, which is a 40% of openness above the podium in order to preserve that airness and light coming through the downtown from the waterfront to the downtown. So these prevent buildings from blocking waterfront views. So let's look at a little bit of details on some of these districts. So this district, the QBD, Quadrill Business Garden and Transit-Oriented Development, or Transit-Oriented District, represents one of the most important long-term growth opportunities in the downtown, as Ana Maria had mentioned before on those slides that she was sharing earlier. So the QBD and TOD are envisioned as the future innovation and employment hub center around transit areas, education, technology, research, and research uses. This area already has several characteristics that make it appropriate for additional intensity, including the proximity to the Tri-Rail station and the Brightline station, but also the large underutilized parcels and access to regional mobility infrastructure. So when we start seeing the existing base and existing incentive, we see that there's already a significant development capacity today through both base zoning and incentive zoning. So base zoning ranges between 3 stories to 3, 5, 8, and 10 stories, and 25 stories on the TOD area. And then the incentive ranges between 5, 8, 10, 12, 15, and then 25 fronting Quadrill Boulevard. So as you can see, the targeted areas are already significantly, has a significant development capacity already happening in place. So what we're proposing is that refining the incentive structure to better align with the long-term vision. So you can see that the highest incentive areas continue to concentrate around the transit system, the transit stations, and major corridors and larger redevelopment sites. The proposal also introduces more targeted sub-districts, including the TOD 10 to 25, because we're changing it, and the new 25A zones, which are intended to encourage a stronger employment and mixed-use component within these areas. The FAR, the height, it's 25 stories in this area, and the FAR ranges between 4.5 with a maximum of 5.25, assuming that the development permitted, that the 0.75, additional 0.75 is utilized for non-residential use. So this is targeting the incentive for not for residential growth, but for other types of developments, as we had mentioned earlier before. So this example that you see here on the screen is how we have been looking at all of the testings and recommendations related to the standards and the requirements that you're going to be seeing throughout the entire proposal. So first, we look at the setbacks and look at the streets that we anticipate that we need to preserve and protect. And then we start setting up setbacks along those streets. As in this case, for example, we have Fern Street, which has a neighboring district that has a 12-story building. So we wanted to make sure that the pedestrian scale on that street is maintained throughout both sides of the street. So there's a deeper setback on that side. Same in Clematis Street, we have a deeper setback on that side because we want to make sure we protect the historic character of that street. In other instances, other streets that we are trying to make sure that the primary pedestrian street is protected also, and the character is protected, we're doing a setback above the 15 stories in order to make sure that we can make the character of that street is also maintained. Since there's a lot of intensity now happening in this district, we also have increased open space requirement. There's a reduced parking requirements, as I had mentioned now, a 25% reduction. The height is 25 stories. And in this particular district, we can see that there are many blocks that are very long or large in length. So we are going to be requirement, which is still part of the existing code, but we're going to be reinforcing the break of these lawns with passageways. So we're introducing more requirements related to the passageways. And as I had mentioned before, the tower length requirement for residential uses only in order to maintain or to avoid wall-like developments happening throughout the downtown. This slide is focusing on the waterfront district. One of the key points to emphasize, as Ana Maria had mentioned, is that the waterfront already contains tall buildings. I'm sorry, Bernard mentioned. So the numbers, the circles and numbers that you're seeing here are highlighting the approximate existing building number of stories in the district. And as you can see, there are buildings that are already exceeding what we are proposing as the maximum height, which will be 25 stories for this district. So the purpose of the update is not to suddenly introduce tall buildings to the waterfront. They already exist, but rather to better manage how future development interacts with the public realm, open space, and the waterfront character. So the existing entitlement has a 5-story buildings happening as a base height, and then the existing incentive only have incentive on the north side, and it goes up to 8 stories with a 3.75 FAR. The proposed maintains the existing base as is. There's no changes there. And the proposed incentive, changes the height to 25 stories with a range of 4.5 to 5.5 FAR, depending on the lot size. And the reason why we did this is that we don't anticipate that all of the lots can maximize or can get to the intensity that's gonna be required. So that's why we have a different change in FAR, depending on the lot size. So similar as you saw for the QBD-TOD, we did extensive numbers of testings for this district to make sure that these requirements fit through different typologies of lot sizes. So in this case, for the Flagler waterfront, what we're calling south, we are requiring a setback fronting Olive Avenue in order to maintain that pedestrian character and street. There's a view corridor on lots wider than 100 feet that requires 40% of continuous view corridor above the podium. And this is depending on certain lot sizes. The parking also, if the development goes above the maximum allowed, there shall be valet, mechanical, and lined with active uses. In terms of height, it's 25-story height, as I had mentioned. And then in this specific sub-district, we're requiring a generous setback along Flagler Drive to preserve the waterfront openness and integrate to the overall public waterfront park concept. So this is about 100-foot setback that we're requiring there, and it will be part of the open space requirement. So this counts towards the open space requirement. We are also, as Bernard had mentioned, we are envisioning this district as a district with slender towers. So there's additional building articulation requirements that help build that kind of like massing that we are anticipating to see in the district. This is another example of how we looked at the rest of the district, which is the same requirements except for that general setback fronting the open space, fronting the Flagler Drive. So when we look at the QGD, the Quadrille Garden District, this district is seen and it has developed throughout these years beautifully, and it has a character of it's been called the Garden District, and it's something that we want to preserve. So the images on the right is the typology that we are foreseeing and want to maintain and integrate into the code. So we are enhancing and maintaining some of the standards that already are in place to be able to maintain this typology of development. The existing base and existing incentive, as you can see, the existing entitlement goes from 5 stories, the majority are 10 stories to 25 stories. And then the existing incentive happens to 25 stories fronting Quadrille Boulevard with a 15-story building incentive on the north side of the district. The proposal maintains the existing base as is, and what we're doing is now we are filling allowing the southern portion of Quadrille Garden District to have an additional incentive, because we see many underutilized parcels that could benefit from having incentive in that area. The other change that we're doing here is that now the FAR, similar to how we have done on the Flagler Waterfront District, are going to be based on lot sizes, and they will range from 4.5 to 5.5 FAR. The Lofting District, it's envisioned, or it is existing, a transitional district. It's adjacent to the downtown core area. And then on the north side, it has the Providencia Park District and Brussels Park and Nora to the west. So we are envisioning this district to be maintained and positioned as a transition district to allow some higher intensity, but also to be able to transition into the lower neighborhood scale that's on the north side. So existing, you can see a range of height of 4 stories, 5 stories, 3 stories. And then fronting the Dixie Highway is where the existing incentive is, up to 12 stories. What we're proposing is to shift the incentive closer to where we are seeing or envisioning the height happening or the changes happening, and following or continuing the corridor that we see in the waterfront. So we're changing the properties that are fronting Flagler Drive to have a higher, to have an incentive of up to 15 stories with 3.75 FAR. Something else to mention here, as Anna had mentioned, as Bernard had mentioned in the beginning, is that the recommendation also has an important change reflected in the proposal of the parcel north of the district from Providencia Park Professional Office to LD5. The intent is to align the zoning with the surrounding mixed-use context and development pattern already emerging in the area. So this recognizes that this property functions more consistently with the Lofting District character than with the lower scale professional office framework intended for the interior Providencia Park neighborhood. As we move into the Northwest District, we have had many conversations with the community stakeholders for this neighborhood, and we've heard 4 main objectives that they envision and see how this district is going to be developed. First is maintain neighborhood character and historic identity, provide affordable housing options, and improve the public realm as it relates to the streets, open space, trees, etc. And then expand home ownership opportunities. So the recommendations that we're doing for this proposal are based on these main 4 objectives, as we have heard from the community. So the current neighborhood, it's a historic multifamily neighborhood, and we're trying to enhance and enhance and incentivize this district, but maintaining the scale as it is existing in the neighborhood and as we heard from the community. So the current density of 14 dwelling units per acre happening in the core of the district will increase to 21 dwelling units per acre. And on the transition areas going into the edge or major corridors will be 28 dwelling units per acre. So that will be the main change that we're seeing in this neighborhood. As you can see on the left map, this is the existing base height, and the area highlighted in black has no more than 3 stories. The proposal is the same area highlighted in black and has no more than 3 stories as the existing, as what we heard from the community. But what we're doing is intensifying a little more the neighborhood to be able to allow more housing options and housing home ownership opportunities into the neighborhood. The targeted higher heights only on the edge and on major corridors. And then there's limited 4-story on selected places along Rosemary as it exists right now on the code, but this is in order to encourage more ground floor retail. So what you see on the screen here are the typologies, residential typologies that we're seeing in the core of the neighborhood. These are the existing typologies that you see in the neighborhood right now. We're trying to reinforce them, and we're trying to make sure that what we're trying to change is the standards that accompany the typology that are happening here, so that the public realm also works well with what we have in the neighborhood and enhances the neighborhood character. So we see townhomes, single-family homes, multiplex, ADUs, duplexes, walk-ups, and in some instances, some courtyard infill that could happen along the corridors or major streets. And then when we look outside of the district core, on the edge zone, we're seeing or envisioning building types such as walk-ups, townhomes, and multifamily, which are the type of developments that are already occurring in the neighborhood. With that, Claudia is gonna continue with the next steps. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mike's on. One clarification while you're there, just relative to the FWD and the quadrille. You mentioned 25 stories, but you mentioned a max 200 feet on the tower.
So there's going to be a new requirement for the all districts of 200 feet maximum tower length for only residential uses.
Your length, not height.
Length, tower length, yes.
Good morning, Claudia Babin, City Urban Designer. Thank you for being here. That was a long presentation. It was very difficult to really have a presentation that has all that minimal information that you need to be aware of, but is extensive, right? There's a lot of details that go into it, so thank you for that. But before I go into the next steps about this process, I do want to just say that, as you mentioned, it was mentioned that you have 2 cases in front of you. One is a code revision case number for the downtown master plan regulation, and the other one is for the rezoning of the 2 properties that are the only ones that will be rezoned. Now, through that process of that rezoning, we are required to provide public notice of this rezoning to neighbors that are, or property owners that are 500 feet around this property. That was sent out. And because of that, neighbors to the north in the actual property, which I want to get the address right. I think some of you are here, I believe. The 917 North Flagler, where the Yacht Club towers are located, they actually started reaching out to us and expressed interest into rezone that property too. That is just north from the one that we discussed that it was going to get rezoned to the Lofton District 5. So I have received 33 emails from different property owners asking for this request. And we and the consultant, we're going to see whether or not that is appropriate based on everything that we have shared with you. But if anything happens, it will be another case number that will come in front of you and for you to make recommendations of approval. So I just wanted to make that is clear that in the record. The other thing that I also want to say is that as the Downtown Action Committee discusses 2 cases, you are only making a recommendation. City Commission has the actual authority to approve these cases. So Planning Board is going to do the same thing next week. And As Maria mentioned, Ana Maria, our Director of Development Services, this is the start of this whole process of public hearings. And if anyone from the public would like to continue to join the public hearings, you are always welcome to come and to continue to give that feedback. So here on the screen, you actually have all the dates that we will be coming with the Downtown Master Plan update. And next week, we will have Planning Board. We will follow with the Historic Preservation Board. And then we will come back to you just to make that changes into the comprehensive plan. And then we are scheduled to go to City Commission in July.
I just have a question on that process. Are we able to make a recommendation subject to certain conditions or changes?
Yes.
I'm sorry, are we moving into discussion and vote now?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more thing. And as part of this process, I do want to say that staff has evaluated all these proposals and these two cases, and we do recommend approval based on the findings that the proposed text amendment and rezoning comply with all the amendment standards found in Section 9432 of the Zoning and Land Development Regulations. That is the end of this presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Very thorough, very good history of everything from Ziskovich and staff. So, do you want us to do? Oh, go ahead.
Before we move on, just want to make it clear, as staff stated, that these are two different votes.
Right.
And I do understand that we have a recusal on the area-wide rezoning. So I will let that.
Dr. Grace.
Yep. Yeah, so I'll recuse myself from code revision case number 2603 as part of the NORA development team.
Right, and then at that time, when that vote comes up, Mr. Grace will get up, leave the dais, and recuse himself, and then he will file the proper paperwork after.
Okay, great. So we can either take, have discussion questions, any specific questions maybe that are relevant immediately for staff or the consultants, or we can go ahead and hear public comments first and come back and then have executive discussion.
Yeah.
And you'll let me know when to.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose, why don't we just go ahead and do public
Why don't we
comment?
do public comments?
Yeah, let's do public comments. So we have a stack of those.
Are you going to do? All right. Are you doing comments and discussion together on both?
Cases.
Okay. In that case, Mr. Grace, I would recommend that you get up and leave now. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do that. Do you want to take a quick 2-minute break? Do you want to start with that first? Sure.
Okay. The first name is Fatima Sanarjaj. I know I did. I'm sorry about that pronunciation.
Used to it.
You
Good
can hold
morning.
on one sec, please.
Okay, sure.
That was next. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Of course. Good morning. My name is Fatima Sanandaji. I live at 701 South Olive Avenue. Just to give you some background, I grew up in New York City. I worked there for 20 years on Wall Street. I come from a real estate development family. So I do believe that development can strengthen a city. However, the current pace and scale of high-rise construction in West Palm Beach has become detrimental to our quality of life. Now, I know many people have comments, and I'm going to try not to sort of reiterate what they're going to come to you with, but 2 weeks ago, I wasn't able to go to the workshop, so I watched the YouTube video. The public still didn't have access to the downtown master plan, so I had to screenshot every slide. That was interesting. One slide that I noticed, the fine print had to do with the FAR, and now I see it's been updated to 0.75 in the Flagler Waterfront District. So I'm just curious to understand, what does that translate to? Does that mean if a developer donates to the city fund, which is what it said 2 weeks ago in the fine print, so now it's 0.75. So if a developer meets all these requirements, what does the 0.75 mean? Like they can build to 25 floors, and then how many additional floors can they build to? Because I already have a draft from the Brodsky organization that's on file, that they've leased the land from the Holy Trinity Episcopal Church for 99 years, and they have a number of variances that are troubling, like for setbacks, and then they want to, they want to build up to 30 floors. Granted, it has to go through approvals. Oh, sorry. So that's just one example where a lot of concern has developed amongst the public. So there needs to just be more clarification in this presentation. What are these requirements that developers have to meet in order to receive the 0.75? And then what is that 0.75? It helps to spell it out. Basically, it gives more clarity, transparency. And then, just to close, in the last month, there's been a lot of press in the Palm Beach Post that's really undermined public trust. These are phrases from the Post: apparent collusion, alleged pressure tactics towards a longstanding and beloved local family. It was noticeable that the downtown master plan was not posted until, I believe, Monday or the end of last week. And even that is not clearly posted. It's under, like in the court, you have to click under another section. So there's a page that says downtown master plan. The actual plan, PDF, should be linked right there. Right now, if you want to go look at it, you have to click down again. Most people don't know that, and that's not fair.
Thank you for your time.
That's my time up. And just the scheduling of these meetings and the scheduling of the vote when people aren't here. I mean, majority of people are away for the summer. It would have just been, I think, the public trust. It just doesn't feel like it's there.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Reverend Hyman, Holy Trinity? Yes. 211. Are you just putting it behind or are you stacking it?
Thank you. I'm Reverend R.J. Heyman, Rector of Holy Trinity Episcopal Church. We have been in the downtown since 1897. We first started worshiping on the second floor of a dock building at the end of Clematis. We built our first church in 1900 at the corner of Avernia and South Dixie, where McKebb's Bagels is. And in 1924, we built our current church over at Trinity Place. So we've been here almost 130 years. And in those 130 years, we have served literally hundreds of thousands of people in this community through all of our various offerings, both worship services, support groups, outreach efforts. We've also donated millions of dollars to local nonprofits. So I really feel like we've been a really important spiritual part of this community for a long time. In the last 6 years, we've seen incredible growth. When I got here, we were about 200 people a Sunday. In 2026, we're about 550 people a Sunday. We had over 1,100 on Easter. We've got about 2,000 people involved in our community. We actually are the single fastest growing Episcopal church in the United States since 2020. And what that means is that we need more and better space. Our parish hall is too small. We're out of office space. Our children's classrooms don't have restrooms affiliated with them. Our choir hall is on the second floor of a detached building up a narrow flight of stairs that's not really safe to navigate. And on top of that, our infrastructure is really crumbling because we built a lot between the 20s and the 50s. We have not built anything since. And so our sewage is falling apart, our roof, our irrigation, our plumbing, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on maintenance. So we saw this coming. I got a minute left. 4 years ago, we started a strategic planning process. We got a full city block, and we said if we had dreamed big, if we trusted God, what would we want to do? And we decided the church is amazing. We don't want to do anything with the church, but we want to rebuild everything else. And we came up with this amazing plan. You can find it on our website, holytrinitywpb.org/campaign, with pictures, a video, all sorts of stuff to increase our ministry space, increase our green space, increase our parking. Now that's gonna be very expensive. So as part of this, we also looked at doing a land lease along the western edge of our property. We talked to a number of different developers. We chose the Brodsky organization because we really liked them. They also have a history of working with churches and doing really good work. And I've talked to church leaders that they've worked with, and nobody has anything but good things to say about the Brodsky organization. Now that being said, we have a very unique piece of property because we're not scraping it clean. Right? We don't want to get rid of the church. We want to enhance the church. We want to build new ministry space. We want to welcome more people in. So we just need some flexibility, basically. On the setback from Flagler, we don't want to build in our front lawn, but we already have Trinity Park right there in front. On the, let me get these terms right because I'm not a developer. On the, the active liners, and then the strict height and setback limitations. We don't want more density. We'd love to be able to build what we need to build on the land lease in order to have the funds we need to continue to grow and develop the church. We believe we're a public good. We're the only place where people of different races, ages, sexual orientations, politics can come together and focus on something bigger, more important than themselves, a place where people find community, hope, peace, love, and where they serve our community. That's all we want to do. That's all I want to do. I want to serve God. I want to serve our community. But we'd love to have a little bit of flexibility so we can use this really unique piece of property to generate the funds we need to both build the buildings we want to build and then also provide more resources for the community. So that's what we're trying to do. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. Thank you. Okay, next up, Fatima Sen. Oh, you just did Fatima? That was first. Okay, never mind. David Lawrence. I'm sorry, David Lawrence.
Good morning, group. I'm David Lawrence. I'm an architect. I've lived at 917 North Flagler Drive for over 20 years. I'm an architect. I have a degree in master's in architecture with specialization in urban design, so I do have some kind of idea about zoning. When we got this notice about the rezoning, it seemed that it didn't make a lot of sense to me to include that small little sliver parcel and not ours. It seems just far more logical that it should extend the length of that street, include our parcel, and so that's why we kind of mobilized and tried to get, there were actually 39, I think probably they just arrived late, but you know, we just would like to be included in that rezoning, and I think it makes good sense because our current property is zoned PPDR, which is Providencia Park Residential. It's a non-conforming use, okay? We have a 4-story building, that's a non-conforming height. So we just feel like this just makes good sense to be included in that, and we just hope that that can change. And that's really all I have. And I and 39 of my fellow residents are in agreement as to that we be included. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's see our next one here. I gotta read this one. Peter Peiser, 917 North Flagler Drive. Peter Piper.
Peter Peiser, also from 917 North Flagler, the building just north of 901. I've been an owner for 24 years. I've lived in the building for 10 on the board. And yes, when we were notified 2 weeks ago of this, we were questioned why were we not included, because we are non-conforming. We are a 4-story building. We should be connected to this thing. We canvassed our people, and as David said, 39 of 45, basically 90% of the building have already contacted you. No one has said no, we just couldn't get hold of everyone. The owners, they've indicated that, you know, we're in favor of this. We've sent it to staff, and we'd definitely like to be considered to just be added to the parcel. Thank you much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, Gigi Thailander, 701 South Olive Ave.
Thank you. Gigi Thailander. As you said, I live at 2 City Plaza, and I have been a resident of Palm Beach County for 48 years. I've been involved in the downtown for many years, had property on Clematis, and I now reside on Olive. My primary interest in being involved in this new master plan is to see that if we can maximize the waterfront views for more residents, not just the front row. And I don't really understand why we're trying to change and incentivize 25 stories along Flagler. There's no need for that. The original master plan was designed to be like a cake. So you have lower buildings on Flagler, and then you go back to Australian. The same consultants recommended that, and that's what we've been living by. So all I see is gridlock in downtown now. We have problems with traffic as it exists, and when we add these additional buildings, we don't have the flexibility of adding north-south streets. We've got Flagler, you have Dixie, you have Olive, you have Quadrille, you have what's it called, Rosemary, Sapodillo, and then you got to go to the lake. So we don't have any space to add that north-south. And our east-west, those are somewhat limited as well. So I'm very glad to hear that our transportation department is confident that they can change this. I have to say that I questioned people in South Florida are tied to their cars. It's hot as hell in the summer. People are not gonna, be riding their bikes and their scooters when they're 70, 80 years old. People who can afford a $10 million apartment along Flagler, they come with 3 cars each, not scooters and not bikes. So it's a nice thought, but we do have to be practical. So please consider that those that live here do not want to be gridlocked in, but it won't be a pleasant environment. And also, with regard to the discussion on parks on Flagler, I am so against taking the property away from the Caniglios and Bradleys. They are a legitimate company that's been here for many, many years and contributed thousands and thousands of happy times to people. Thank you.
Thank you, Gigi. Okay, we have Brian Seymour, 777 South Flagler Drive.
Good morning. For the record, Brian Seymour. I'm an attorney with the Gunster Law Firm, 777 South Flagler Drive. We're at the actual very edge of the downtown master plan area. I'm working with the Brodsky organization. I have several clients with properties in the downtown. The overriding theme of this is that there's got to be flexibility. And what we're asking is to look at this in a way that allows for flexibility in a number of different things. So Mr. Ziskovich talked about liner units, which works if you have a larger property, may not work if you have a smaller property. Some of that is variable, some of that can be worked with. What we would ask is that there be flexibility provided. The one thing that isn't allowed to move is height. And we don't understand why, because you can deal with things. If you have a 20-story building going to 25 or 30 or 35 stories, doesn't change what happens to that 20-story building, but with that additional height, you might actually be able to deal with some of the view corridor issues. You might be able to do some different design. And what we're asking for is designers to design. And specifically, this impacts the Holy Trinity site, and you heard from RJ about what they're trying to accomplish. And because that site particularly has the unique element of the historic church, there's not a lot of room to build, because that has to be the core of what stays and what's being provided, in addition to providing the additional communal space that he talked about. And so while the regulations generally are good, they can work, there's gonna need to be flexibility. There are 2 elements that are critical for us. One is the frontage, because they now will have, only Holy Trinity is measured from Chase. So they now have 100+ 100 plus of green space from Flagler. So Flagler is no longer the road. And then you have the issue of the height that limits the ability to work because there's a limited piece of that property that really works to get there. We are not asking for additional FAR. In fact, no matter what we do, we're not going to maximize the FAR. It's not possible without scraping the church and starting the entire thing all over. And so we're not looking for more density. We're not looking for more intensity. We're just looking for flexibility in design so we can create something unique and special. It happens outside the downtown. And you've seen it up and down Flagler, and it's worked. And all we're saying is let's do that inside the downtown as well. So we do appreciate the work. We know there's some unique properties, and that makes it a little difficult. But if you allow for the variances and allow for the waiver opportunities, if not waivers, because downtown's the only place other than City Place where you can't do a PD. I think City Place is a PD. Nothing else in the downtown is a PD. So you do have some limits on that, so they're variances, but give us the opportunity to design. It means you have to see it. It means we have to work with the neighbors. We got to pull things together. All we're asking is that opportunity. So we appreciate that as you consider that today. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, next up, Phyllis Rubenstein, 2 City Plaza. Same? Okay.
My comments have already been discussed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll put a ditto here then. There we go. Perfect ditto. Okay, next up, Joseph First, 1105 North Dixie Highway.
Chairman Jensen, before my time begins, would you allow me to hand out some materials?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let's give one to the staff too, or attorney here, whomever.
I'm just going to wait, if you don't mind, so you can follow along with it. When I'm up here, I typically don't have a 3-minute restriction, so this is going to be challenging. Okay, thank you very much. So Joseph First, 1105 North Dixie Highway, partner and developer of the Nora District. So fundamentally, the most important point for me to make while I'm up here today is what you heard is that everything that is being proposed is in addition to what is already in place. That is not the case for Nora. That is not the case at all. So there are 2 points that we need to focus on. The current code in Nora allows us to build to a maximum building height and remove the limitation on stories so long as a certain percentage of our building is residential. As currently contemplated, this code would change that, and that would reduce and remove our vested development rights that we have to achieve the FAR that we have in place. The second piece of this that was not mentioned, I think it's probably just specific to Nora again, is that we are the greatest user of incentive zoning. If this code were to pass as is, and non-residential uses would be required to participate in incentive zoning and affordable set-aside, that would be a taking of our development rights for commercial development that we already have. That is outside of something that was already, obviously voted on through City Commission and is part of our code. So although it may seem that for the majority of the city, everything that is being proposed is in excess of what is already there, that is not the case for Nora. So I wanted to make that very, very clear. Some more specific items that I'd like to talk about. The first of which is related to the incentive zoning. Right now, they're using a proposed land cost factor of 25%, which is if you study the CBRE or the JLL report as to what the typical percentage of land cost is when calculating a development is significantly high. I've requested that that get lowered to the more market standard of 15%. The second piece related to the incentive zoning is the timing of the payments. So we have a for-sale condominium project that is already in plan. As planning staff knows, there was no specificity as to how affordable projects would be dealt with. This is taking care of that. We are asking for some changes to the payment provisions of those affordable payments. You'll see that under section 2, that's the third point. The next thing that I'd like to focus on is related to Brailsford Park. This is the ability that we're very happy about that has been proposed, that if you have a master plan, you are allowed to create some unique characteristics within the Brailsford Park district. We just want to ensure that that master plan can be approved with no limitations, obviously with city support and city buy-in. And then lastly, just talking about transportation. So Jessica obviously made commentaries about TDM strategies. We are a district, not a single project. So it is very complicated for us to, on a project-specific basis, have one TDM strategy. We would like to ensure that there's district-wide TDM strategies. And the other thing I'd like to point out is based on some of the mode shift expectations that are being suggested, based on the placer data that we already have for Nora, meaning where visitors are coming from, we're talking about less than a 6% impact based on the amount of visitors when we go to all these means of additional transportation. So for us, parking is very important and want to ensure that's supported by city staff and the city generally. So thank you very much.
Thanks. We'll make sure staff gets through all this. Very quick question for staff based on that commentary. If there's anything in these proposed changes that would down zone or downsize, how is that being handled? Do they have to have approvals in place, or maybe just address that comment?
Ana Maria Aponte, Development Services Director. I think, we can discuss more detail with Mr. First, but I think all the development that he's talking about is incentive-based. So the proposal is not taking away any developments by right. The Nora district has specific incentives that are allowed if a project has not been submitted and the regulations are changed of what is required for the incentives. It will be applicable to those parcels where development has not occurred or site plans have not been submitted for approval. So the projects that are moving forward are applicable under the current circumstances, but any changes will be applicable to the parcels that have not submitted for development. Okay. And it's the Nora, it's basically an incentive-based development. The by right in there is very low, so he's right saying that his development capacity, the majority comes from incentives. So they purchase a large amount of TDRs, and the development of the other parcels will have to pay for the city development rights to achieve it.
Okay. All right, thanks. I'm assuming you'll follow up with all the specifics with them. Okay, thank you. Joseph. Next, we have John McNamara, 201 South Narcissus. John McNamara? Well, maybe he went out. We'll step that. We'll put that to the side. Michael Cuevas, 600 South Dixie. A former board member. Welcome back.
Hello, everyone. Michael Cuevas. Many of you know me. I served on the DAC for 2 years. I've lived in downtown for 16 years. And I've attended, I believe, 6 of the 7 public meetings for the DMP. And I think there's been tremendous work on this new DMP, and it will only improve building design, public open space in the downtown, having slender buildings with view corridors. I think city staff and the Siskovich team has listened to a lot of things that we've asked for. I know we met with some of you individually. We've met with city staff, increased bike storage, the room for off-street service vehicles within buildings, for rideshare. All of these things I think are going to be fantastic. And as far as the increased incentives tied to the CDRs, I think it's a great program. If the developers want increased density, they have to provide public benefits, additional affordable housing. It's a great program. I wasn't going to talk about this, but hearing or seeing this list from Jessica Keller, I don't think I've ever met you, regarding how we're going to use mobility fees to make mobility better in the downtown. One thing I didn't see on that list in our walkable city was shade trees. I walk the downtown every day. It's summer, it's super hot. We've been asking for this for 16 years. There must be 75 empty tree pits in the downtown right now. And I think the number one priority in a walkable city should be walkability. So I really would love to see on that list that we're gonna do whatever we can. I know it's expensive, I know it requires irrigation. I know developers do a great job when they do a new project to add shade trees, but for all the empty tree pits, they've been there since I've lived here. Never gonna get through this. My concern with where we are moving forward, the big difference in our development cycle right now is we are doubling our Class A office space. And since 1984, when we built Phillips Point, we've added about 1.6 million square feet. We're adding 1.5 to 1.6 million square feet right now. That's gonna be a big change. I now sit on the Citizen Action Committee for the MPO, and I just met with them last week, and we've talked about some significant things that would change transportation flow in the downtown. Grade separation at Belvedere over the FEC, grade separation at Tamarand over the FEC, light rail that would go out to Wellington, a people mover that would go from the airport to the downtown. These are gonna take time. The MPO budget over the next 5 years in Palm Beach County is over $4 billion. None of that is earmarked for West Palm Beach, for any of those things I just discussed. And I asked him why. What would make those things start to become a priority? And it's leadership. We need the city leaders, the mayor, city traffic engineers, the developers, powers that be, Steve Ross, to start making these things a priority. And we should have been making them a priority 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because we knew this was coming. These things take a long time. The next 5 years, the MPO budget, it's already set. That $4 billion, there's some discretionary funds, but you know, these things take 10, 15 years to plan. So I just want to see the narrative change that we have capacity, we have capacity, we have capacity. We are about to experience explosive growth here, particularly things that take the highest traffic demands, which is Class A office space.
Thank you. You have exceeded your 3 minutes.
I know. The capacity is going to be reduced.
You can wrap it up. Go ahead.
Yeah. The capacity is going to be reduced, and we're going to see big changes. So I just want this narrative to change. We need to start asking for these things now, work with the county, get these grants, start putting these projects in the pipeline. So thank you.
Please, let's try to stick to the 3 minutes, folks. We got a lot of people.
I think we're near the end of it, actually. Arthur Bloomer said he did not want to speak, but wanted his request made part of the public record. His comments were E.R. Bradley's other shops along South Clematis must stay. So noted. I think that's back to the beginning. Okay. Did John McNamara make it back?
I think he left.
Maybe he left. Okay. Thanks for the comment. Does anyone else in the audience want to make a comment while we have public comment open? Seeing none, we'll close public comment discussion and then take questions, comments from the board to the staff and the consultants, or address any of the comments that you heard from the public if you have any specific replies. And then after that, we'll formulate a couple of recommendations for the 2 separate projects. So who would like to start? Veronica?
Good morning. First of all, thank you for the great presentation. I know it's a lot of work and you've outdone yourself. I just had a few questions about, first of all, the building heights. I know you touched on this. I was just wondering if there's a mandatory tower separation distance, and really if you could just kind of go over once again, you know, how are you going to prevent these 25-story buildings from creating these wall effects? So if you could just touch on that once again, quickly.
Sure. Is that for Ziskovich or stuff?
Yes, there is an existing building separation of 60 feet between towers, and this happens throughout all of the any type of building height. So there needs to be a 60 feet separation between the towers.
60 feet.
60, yes.
So relative to those of us that drive on Flagler, do you know what the separations are between the new towers at South Flagler House and the Forte?
Mm-hmm.
You don't. I mean, just for comparison, since we have some structures that are tall and that are close to each other, it'd be nice to have a comp. That'd be great.
And if I, just on this topic again, if maybe it might be helpful if there's a way that you can create some sort of rendering so that public can also see it as well, because I mean, technically speaking, it's really great to see and it's understandable, and just maybe some renderings of different ways in which, if the buildings were built the way that you suggest are going to be built, so that the public, from maybe even from a waterfront perspective, can see how that development's going to look. That's just my suggestions, because all these, it is very technical and it can be a little daunting for everybody, especially the public who might not know all the technicalities behind certain things. So maybe seeing an image of the different type of scenarios that could happen over the years might be just a little helpful. And then my second concern was on the transportation. I thought those were really great ideas when it comes to the bus system and the different connections that you are trying to implement. I do understand that you are trying to connect the service with the person as fast as possible, but I do think you're going to continue to have the problem when it comes to congestion, because even though, okay, the person is in a bus or is in a shared service within 15 to 20 seconds or is implemented that way, it's still going to be congested. So even though, okay, in 2 minutes I can get into the bus, it's going to still take a long time to get to whatever destination they need to get. And people, we are a society of convenience. They're always going to select the car rather than the public service. So I just wanted to point that out. And I think maybe decreasing the parking is not going to be conducive to kind of cutting back on all these cars as well. So those were all just my comments on those.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Veronica. Zach?
Sure, thank you. Well, thank you for all the effort. I know this has been something that you've been living and breathing for the past 2 years. To be honest with you, from my perspective as a board member, I think we're just reaching this critical mass of understanding at this point to have those meaningful discussions and workshops. That last meeting, I understand I was hoping it would be a workshop or a charrette so that we could understand the code, maybe take a scenario and do a design, see how it works. Hey, this doesn't work, but that didn't really pan out that way as much as it was kind of a public comment. So I really appreciate the transportation person here and saying all those programs. Again, on the day of the vote, it just seems like I have so many questions, I can't even know where to begin on some of these things. So I think that's my general gut in terms of just where we are with the process. Again, I can only speak for myself. Everyone has a different perspective, but that seems to be mine. I think what may be helpful to integrate into the code is a golden ticket, for lack of a better example in zoning. Instead of a zoning code that's very prescriptive, and again with the visuals, I can kind of understand how the downtown cityscape can formulate and where it could be. But there's going to be so many problems. I think we've heard from the development community, you know, this variance and that variance, and this is cumbersome and that's cumbersome. Artists, architects, creative people really ought to have full license to design the best and reveal the best urban design for that space. And to that end, I'd like to introduce staff to consider some other kind of vehicle or mechanism in the code where, just for an example, let's say there's this incredible world-class building that comes to our downtown. It's going to come down, and the future is here, right? eVTOLs, as my fellow board member talked about, drones flying people to the airport, this is going to happen. There's going to be a building, maybe it's got a gigantic void or a hole in it where it becomes this heliport for things. You know, again, the zoning code doesn't really fit that. Can there be a creative mechanism or part of the code that might say, this is generally where we're heading with all this zoning and FAR and form, but because of these creative things, could there be a special exception or a special review, whether it's a betterment plan or an alternate plan, as opposed to going to a variance process, which can be very cumbersome and impossible in some situations. So I'm just kind of thinking creatively and offering that as part of this going forward, because again, there's the unknown unknowns, and to have something in the code that can address that as opposed to having to redo the code in 10 years or, respond to these technology changes, I think would be very proactive to the city and very strong on their part. The ultimate form of the skinny buildings, I understand the logic, but it seems to me that if that's followed and if the development industry typically maximizes their development for profit and a for-business company, we might end up with a city that has very similar buildings, these sort of stalagmites coming from the ground that may not be the ultimate vision of the city. When I was driving in today, I took a quick look over Clear Lake, and I was proud of the downtown. There's diverse buildings. There's this that happened 20 years ago. There's all this diversity that represents our community. And if we go 50 years and all of a sudden these are long, skinny, kind of tall buildings everywhere, I just don't know if that's ultimately what we want. And therefore, if the flexibility is there to do that or to do something different that's unique and placemaking, I just don't want a homogeneous downtown that ultimately, looks like LA or something with a bunch of spiky buildings that may not serve the public as good. Transportation mitigation strategies, I saw that long list. I'm still I don't have a really good confidence or understanding on what those programs are, and I'll just mention a specific one. I don't know if any of you know what the Dutch shuttle is. Have you ever heard that in Holland? It's basically a Batmobile limousine. It's this futuristic limousine with batwing doors, and it's a very popular mass transit orientation. If you could have a program like that, I think Bernard has mentioned it many times, down Okeechobee Boulevard, if we can have something that brings 40 people out of their cars from a remote unit to the downtown in a super cool car that probably everybody wants to be on, and there's a waiting list, right? How do you do those programs? Do you offer incentives that says every 12th person gets a free ride here? You can leave your car at home. You don't have to pay for car insurance. These are good, tangible programs that I can identify with saying, if they're going to take 40 cars off the street with this world-famous vehicle, maybe you invent a new one, the West Palm Ride, whatever it is, create some tangible programs that work with the numbers. And if those programs, maybe they do exist and I just don't understand what they are, I'd love to hear about them to understand that, in 10 years, all the workers from Palm Springs, or not all of them, but many of them are not going to be clogging up the roads because they have this program they're going to. So tangible transportation strategies, I think, is part of what's missing. I would also avoid punitive strategies in urban growth and the downtown. I've heard of comparisons to New York City where you have a congestion tax, taking people off the road. That's elitism, right? That creates, I can't afford it. Only rich people can now go to the downtown and park. Should there be parking meters? I've heard nothing but exponential growth of permit fees and money coming into the city. Why do people have to pay for parking? Can't there be a reload allocation to create that community that betters the citizenry, not punishes them? And then finally, the account of the public realm benefits directly from the downtown growth and their need to increase. I've lived here for 26 years. I've seen the growth. We've all seen the growth with beautiful buildings, urban design. But I haven't seen the public realm keep up with that in a commensurate level. I think Michael Cuevas mentioned, empty tree pits downtown. There can't be zillion-dollar buildings going up and then you have no shade tree on the street. There's a disconnect between what I think is all this incredible, exciting development happening. Fun time to be here in West Palm Beach, right? It's very, very engaging, but when you don't see that public realm keep up, then the public trust or the use of funds becomes apparent. One last example, just as a landscape architect, Rosemary Avenue in City Place. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it got built. It had curbs. It looked like a pretty nice street. They just kept adding to it. They changed the street. It's now flat. It's more pedestrian friendly. There's more landscaping and trees and biomass on that street than I think any other street I've ever seen in the world. It feels good. It's biophilic. It's green. It's shady. It feels great. That's a private development. Go to all the other streets, all the other public right-of-ways. It's nowhere near that, and I think it needs to be closer to that. And with that, I thank you for the comments.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks, perfect. Brian, you want to go? Or who's ready? Who's ready? Which one? Okay. Michael.
I have some questions for the city. I don't know who can address them. I appreciate as far as now the proposal in regard to loading zones being in buildings. It wasn't clear to me, is it all off-street requirements for any new construction, or is it was clear you're talking about shading or something like that. It wasn't clear, but is the requirement that for all new construction, the loading zones must be within the building? All right, I'm seeing nods of heads. Okay. I'm still concerned in regard to Olive Avenue traffic and just general traffic downtown. I haven't seen anything that's any type of proposal for how we fix any of that. For example, we still have commercial loading zones on Olive right before Clematis. It's loading in areas that do not make sense. The city is unable to enforce any way to prevent these trucks from just parking where they're parking. So maybe there needs to be some type of proposal to somehow fix it. Maybe it's taking away parking spaces, some of the parking meters, and doing something like that. I'd still like to see something like that accomplished. As far as, one question I have as far as the limit on the, is there a limit on the TDRs now under this plan, or is this going to be unlimited? Because see, my understanding was there used to be limits on the number of TDRs that we could have, and now it's not clear to me whether there are limitations.
No, the TDR program will continue as it has been. The issue is that we don't have enough historic eligible structures out there for the amount of development that is coming through. But the TDR will continue, yeah.
And one thing I was wondering, the 25-story height limit, is that the maximum if someone, even if they get, they can transfer from an historic building to their building? Can they not go higher than 25? Okay. One thing that was really not touched on much, other than the fact that we did hear a specific language from Mr. Ziskovich that he's looking at Flagler Drive and the park system, but we didn't discuss the Flagler cutout. We didn't discuss any of that. My recommendation to the city right now is going to be that needs to be part of it. Either it's in or it's out. And I've been asking to see some rendering of what this proposal is. I know apparently there's all kinds of renderings being circulated right now as to what exactly this new Flagler Drive is going to look out. For example, I live at the Esplanade Grand. I've been told mixed things. Are we going to have a cutout for our valet parking in the front? No one has answered that. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see whatever this proposal is, if we're going to take away the Bradley space and make this into a park, then that needs to be part of this plan, because I don't believe that the proposal that we've seen is based on it being in or out. I think the proposal is based on there being the park there. That's, I think, in my belief, why we have 25-story buildings that supposedly would go up there. And if it's the park is out, then maybe we need to consider whether we allow 25-story buildings going there. But my recommendation is we need to have whatever the proper charrettes are in regard to the park plan. We need to be clear what this proposal is. I understand it may not be the city that's created it, it may be related that's done it. That needs to be shared, because it hasn't been shared with me and I've been asking for it. As far as the historic Northwest and those height limits of going up to, I think it's up to 4 stories, is that what they want? Has anybody asked that neighborhood? They don't want higher than that? Okay. And one thing that's in the paper today, Brightline may be filing a bankruptcy. We don't know if that bankruptcy is going to be reorganization or if they go out of business. And I'm just repeating what I read in the Palm Beach Post, that it seems like it's an inevitability. We're talking about transportation hubs. I think we should consider the fact, what if we do not have Brightline there? That seems like it's a real possibility now. How does that affect any of this? I think that should be factored in now, so we're not coming back 3 years from now and we say, oh, well, we approved the downtown master plan revisions, but that was because we thought that Brightline was going to be here for a long, long time. That may not happen. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Maybe did staff want to respond to the Flagler issue? Is this, how does that fit into the big picture?
Yeah, I can respond to that now. I was waiting for everybody to provide their comments, and then we can, if you allow us some time to respond to all of them.
Yeah. Excellent, excellent. Kim, do you want to go?
Yes, I have several questions. One is the CDR, a few things related to the CDR. One is that, is there a cap on it? So let's say like the TDR, there's a cap because you're based on the maximum potential of all the buildings, but the CDR, is it just $17 per square foot, and then whoever want to pay, then just buy as much as they want? And the second part is that stackable? Is the incentive stackable? Let's say if they have the CDR and TDR, and then also affordable housing, do they just keep stacking it up, or how does that work? And third part of that CDR is how does that apply to the non-residential buildings? Okay, so okay, so that's all that related to the CDR. And my second question relates to the legality of this change versus the referendum. I know I brought this up during the workshop. I asked that we get a legal opinion, like independent legal opinion. There was a referendum capping the height on Flagler, and the answer during the workshop was that there's a state legislation or some other regulation that overrides that referendum, but we don't know that. So I need, as a board, I think, before we can recommend it, we need to see how that, the legality of each one, how we need to see the language to, yeah.
Apologize, I did not realize that was a question, so I will consult with the city attorney and we'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, I think before we even move this forward to the city commission, in order for us to prudently recommend, and then we need to see that legal opinion. And
thank you for the presentation. I had a few comments. First, I think more flexibility for historical sites with unique situations in the site context. I know there's multiple places in West Palm that we could look at and make sure they have the flexibility that's needed. I think capping the height to 5 to 10 stories where there's desirable views like the waterfront is needed, much lower, so those views can be preserved. Also, introducing more biophilia and landscaping and street trees and pocket little garden areas, pocket parks into the planning and zoning would be needed, and I think that's a good idea. The public realm would benefit from that with the street trees and biophilia because, this love of nature, everyone loves that, and it would make more inviting environment. And then the idea of the community redevelopment affordability regarding rentals versus ownership, because I know some buildings, I don't know if the planning and zoning, if they track that, but some buildings are majority of rentals and you cannot own in these larger buildings like buildings near Clear Lake. So I'm wondering if there's a mechanism to kind of track that so we don't have these large buildings that are majority are just rentals and no one can really own anything. So that's basically it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Brian, second. Brian, too. Yeah.
Brian, thank you very much, staff. Thank you, Ziskovich. The time's come. We need this. It's overdue. And, you know, we're in these cycles, and now the pressure's on for West Palm Beach. This document has to guide us for the next 20, 25 years. And the majority of it is fine. It follows through with how the city should continue to develop now that we've got mass downtown and we've got people living downtown, we've got businesses and people working downtown. Michael brought up a great point about, you know, Bright Line and one of the TDM measures, but we're so focused on the downtown and implementing transportation strategies and worried that this or that isn't going to work, when really you have to step back a little bit and you have to look at what's happening in the larger picture around the county and what's happening in the jurisdictions and some of the major corridors leading to West Palm Beach and all the initiatives that are happening outside of that. We're seeing this one little picture at the downtown level, but the reality is there's a lot going on that are in terms of other organizations that are helping to support other methods of getting people to and from downtown. So that I'm confident that with our mobility person and the efforts that are happening, not just in West Palm Beach, but with all the surrounding communities and the county, that this is a serious issue that is going to get corrected, Bright Line in, Bright Line out, but not super concerned about it, but it's being addressed. And we're not at a crash situation. I drive through downtown every single day. We know when the pinch points are, and that's going to work itself out when these measures start to come online and people start to buy into them. I said this at the workshop, and it was, we had the whole plan dropped on us in one meeting at this first sort of meeting for us. And the 2 points I made then are the same I'm going to make now. The first is that we have this document that we're creating right now, and we're on the cusp of a bunch of technologies and a bunch of new methods of doing things, vertiports, people movers. I know it's going to take years to build some of this stuff, but the reality is that if we're planning now, in our document now, and allowing for that, Nick said it perfectly. The next building might have a heliport on top. It might have a people mover port inside of it. That kind of stuff needs to be thought about now, so that with the infrastructure gets built as part of the next 5-year cycle or 10-year cycle. And the last part, I said it at the workshop, it was reiterated here today, and I don't think we're quite there for a decision today, because I think the flexibility has to be in this for the edges and all the smaller parcels and the special parcels that have extra considerations. You can't blanket the whole downtown with one regulation, one requirement, without having some kind of, we have to have a little bit of elbow room here. I think Mr. Seymour said it perfectly. Even with incentives, they're never going to get to their maximum development. I agree 100% with what Ziskovich has said. We don't want monoliths. We want to have open towers and whatnot, and open visibility. Get it. That edge becomes the edge of the downtown. That's going to be what the future looks like for downtown West Palm Beach. If you think there's going to be 5-story buildings 25 years from now in West Palm Beach, you're dreaming. I was here 26 years ago. I saw what the downtown was like. And when they rolled up the carpets at 5 o'clock, no one was downtown. We're in a completely different situation now. And 25 years from now, we're going to be looking at another epoch, another advancement of how this place looks. So if your vision is you're going to want a 5-story building on the waterfront, maybe, but most likely you're going to want towers. You're going to want to have this openness that's been planned and thought through, because that's what the designers do. So give the designers the room to do what they need to do, give them that little bit of flexibility, and I think that will get this plan firmly rooted in being able to move forward. But right now, there's a few moving parts that I think we have to kind of address. Those are my thoughts.
All right, thanks, Brian. So did we hear from one? I can't remember, for the attorney. Is Mr. Grace to be back in here?
He's going to come back. I think he was just outside, and I told him to come back in for the first vote and then to recuse himself for the second. I don't know. Still out there.
All right, well, we've had a lot of great commentary, and thank you for everyone in the public for
No, I think they're getting ready to vote. You're getting ready to vote? No.
I'm just going to make a few comments, and then we'll decide.
I don't think we're going to vote.
And then we'll get some response. I just had a couple of quick comments to follow up on everybody else's, then we can hear from Steph. But yeah, thanks to staff and Ziskovich for all their diligence and hard work and sort of progressing with the previous iterations of the downtown master plan. This goes back a long time, and we've all heard the commentary about the growth of the city, concerns about traffic congestion. My only comments are a couple in general about the Flagler waterfront and the quadrille. Could you just bring up, Ana Maria, just the site plan, the current proposed? Just the Flagler, FWD and the quadrille. And then this might relate to some of the specific commentary to a specific project that seems like it's in the design process now, and it's pending what is the outcome of this DMPU. But I guess I like the massing. I like all of the details. This is just the plan, the site plan. Your figure of ground of the proposed incentives. That's good there. I still wonder, and this is more of a question to the staff and the consultant, if you reverse the height. I mean, to me, the most alarming thing is this 25-story. When you see the red here, and we're going to have 25 stories from the power plant, Flagler, all the way down to La Clara. I think I would personally like to see more relief in height along this FWD core, which you go back to the original master plan, I think they stipulated 15 stories. That was before the referendum, and it's been 5 stories ever since. I would like to see a little more density to the west of this line instead of the 10-story zone, get more height and density in there, and give some massing relief to the Flagler waterfront. You know, you go back to some of the assumptions of the desire for view, light, vistas. I think this wall of 25 stories, and it may not be a wall, we're talking towers, but there's still going to be towers along Flagler. I would like to just hear some commentary from Bernard if you were to swap that height and density and keep the density between quadrille and Olive. So that was one. Then relative to this specific project with the Trinity Church, I think if it's not going to be a designated historic site, it would be great to see ways to do that. Could that be done by expanding that special overlay district of the Okeechobee corridor and include that so they could have a special exception zone there for that particular property, given the historic nature? I don't know if it could be lumped into a special historic category. I think it's probably one of the few historic structures on this whole stretch that's worthy of maintaining and incorporating into and keeping it in the fabric of the downtown. So that's just a second one specific to that site, if they, again, could be in a special category. But those are my comments. I'd love to hear any feedback from staff and Bernard on some of those height and density issues along Flagler, because I think it's one of the biggest issues in my mind relative to all of these proposed changes. So.
Okay, I'm going to answer a couple of the
But we got a lot of, yes, so you're going to go through.
Yes, the specific ones, and then probably Bernard can respond to some of the general ones, and Jessica also has some for mobility. Just your last question regarding the Trinity Church. The Trinity Church itself is identified as an eligible historic structure, is not designated. So if right now, if they want to, right now, the Flagler is not eligible for incentives. It's capped to 5 stories. But let's say the board and the city commission passes the incentive that allows additional height along Flagler and incentives. They can only achieve any incentive if the church is designated. If they don't protect the church, they cannot even attempt to achieve the incentives. That's for Flagler. I just want to clarify for the waterfront park, the green space and the realignment of Flagler Drive is not part of the DMP, what you are reviewing today. What you are reviewing today are regulations that affect private property. So the idea of the park, despite Mr. Siskowicz mentioned this as a visioning aspiration of how to create a larger open space for the city that will kind of serve the entire community. That is an aspiration, is not part of this process. So right now, today, you are not approving anything related to buying Bradley's or making a large park or realigning Flagler Drive. So that's, I just want to be clear, it's not part of this. You are approving regulation for private property. Those were the two. I mean, I think we can, Mr. Siskowicz can address a little bit more the other in detail, but the public realm. I mean, if anything has changed since the original master plan to the master plan that was done in 2007, 2009, was the requirement for public open space. So with the incentives, every developer that used the incentives, or even the base, was required to provide some open space. So those small pocket parks that you see, like for example, on Daytura and Dixie, are two, one next to each other across the street for the assisted living and the other residential on the side. Those are open spaces that are requirement of their developments. Now, with the proposal, what it has been proposed is like when you achieve the incentives, the higher you go, the more intense your development, the open spaces are larger. So it's more required, more percentage of open space that is required with incentives. And then there are some provisions added to it for permeable pavers, for larger percentages of green space, for bioswales along certain areas on the TOD area where the water will run down from the high point. All those are incorporated as part of this proposal. I know you mentioned that you see a lot of empty pits, tree pits in the downtown. It's important to differentiate what we are doing with the private development is when a new project comes in, they are required to provide the additional setback for their new buildings. They're required to provide the trees along the street. They're required to have the sidewalk, the light poles. All that is required for the new construction, and they are in charge of maintaining those. So that makes also a big difference. Most of the cases where you have deficiencies on maintenance is because is the city in charge of maintaining it, and the city unfortunately does not have the capacity to keep up with the maintenance. So the strategy has been for the new projects, we are transferring the maintenance of all the additional streetscape that is planted for the new project to the private property owner, and that has worked very well. So the new street trees that you see around the new projects, those are being maintained by the private property owners.
So Michael Cuevas' comment was about the city portions that haven't been maintained
Most
properly,
likely,
and the private sector's been picking up the.
Yes,
Thank
most
you.
likely. I mean, like if you see, I mean, like the city tries to keep up, but it's a lot. And I don't know if you have heard, I mean, the city is short-staffed, we don't have enough resources. So it is a lot of the maintenance. So the strategy has been trying to transfer the maintenance of those improvements on the public realm to the private property owners. We enter into maintenance agreements, and they are responsible for maintaining the trees, the landscape, and if they have any specialty pavers.
That's the part I don't understand. I think, there is so much money around. Why doesn't the city's maintenance department have money to make the landscaping look great? That's what I don't get.
And I mean, like, and we're not gonna go into a budget discussion at this hearing, but if you look at the budgets, and you can watch at the presentations that are being taken place at the work sessions for the City Commission about the budget for the city, there is not a lot of money. I mean, like the cost of just running the operation of the city and the increases in cost for just the typical things have escalated substantially in the last years. Everything is more expensive, and yes, the taxes have increased, and I show you even a slide today of how that is the increase of the cost. A large percent, I think is, and I don't quote me exactly, I think 56% of the budget of the city is life safety. So police and fire are basically just covering like 56% of the budget of the city. So the rest of the city has to cover the operations of the rest of the departments and what is maintenance of public realms like parks, right-of-ways, all that. It's a high portion, and it's never enough. I mean, the maintenance, every time that we do a streetscape project, that when we get funding from FDOT or from MPO or for any other organization to do streetscape projects, the challenge is always to ensure that we have the maintenance for the money to maintain the quality of the streetscape that is being built with these grants afterwards. It's a challenge, it's constant, it's a problem, and the city does not have the capacity to do it. So that's why the strategy has been transferring to the owners of the development. They install it and they are responsible for maintaining it. So it only happens when a new project comes in, that's when you are able to do it. If the development doesn't happen, you are not able to improve that, and they are not able to maintain it. So I think we have other ones. Bernard, I don't know if you want to talk about the flexibility. I think that's an important.
So let me take off the consultant hat for a second. The questions that everyone raises are obviously valid. This is a very big set of issues that people talk about. But you need to keep a couple of things in mind. One is the mission that we have is to try and do no harm, if possible, and to make sure that we set up a situation where the city at large is the main benefactor, not any individual property owner. Having said that, there's always going to be situations that require special handling. That is not something we can manage, because what we're trying to do is create a set of guidelines, regulations, codes that reinforce the objective. The reinforcement of the objective is to make the best possible experience in the public realm, in the open spaces, in the feeling of the city, but not addressing specific issues, by example, that come up regarding the Holy Trinity Church, or probably other situations that might be very specialized. Now, the reason I say let me take my hat off, because I'm not in charge, I'm just advising, right? Other cities have things called design review boards. They have other kinds of review processes that deal with special conditions. Because you can't really anticipate every single possible innuendo that would come up that might relate to a particular project. The reason I like to say that we're architects, not just planners, planning and zoning and urban design, is because we do the best we can. We try really hard to make sure that we have as much flexibility as possible for the architect, which is why we don't have mandated requirements related to the form of a building or the way in which it's put together or any of those things. The things that we try to reinforce are the things that affect the experience on the street. So we try to, as much as possible, by example, avoid 6 stories of garage that occupy an entire half a block, because it has a negative impact on the street. So we require liners. We want to make sure that after a certain height, the tower steps back, because we don't have wide streets in this city. The city is managing to do it only because, together with the city, we came up with this idea that 16 feet back from the curb, think about that. We're not tying the setback to a property line. This city, the way it's been built over the last 20 years, has tied the setback to the curb of the street, which means that in some properties it enters into the property more than other properties. We found a way to democratize the public realm instead of the private realm. So why am I saying all that? It's because we have a lot of flexibility. And when we have those special conditions that require something to happen, it actually falls on you guys. Because somebody, like the church, by example, will say, we have this problem, we need you to help us resolve it. That's not something we can embed in the code without making that the rule for everybody on Olive Street, and we don't want that. Not every property has the same conditions, restrictions, constraints that that particular historic property has, so why would we try to accommodate it for the entire street if in fact it only applies to one property? So the flexibility, let's say we have, not say we already have it. I mean, we have Waymos. We're gonna be delivering, packages to rooftops. I mean, this is reality, it's happening already. It's definitely there. This set of envisioned benefits will accommodate all that. But let's say somebody comes in and they have a better mousetrap, and it doesn't really work, but it's going to make the city better. Well, initially that becomes a variance of some type. You have to do some special condition. You have to work harder to get that project approved. But it would be, I think, not in the interest of the city for us to open it up so that anything that anybody wants, because your comment about let designers design, I'm a designer, I want to design. But I want to design based on the parameters that are set forth if possible. If it's not possible, then I need another process. So I think what you're asking for, in a sense, is maybe not really viable. You know, you are the group. When we did the code before, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it was our idea to set up the DAC, because the city needs you to deal with the special conditions. And I think there's already a lot of flexibility in the code. Now, regarding Flagler, let me just say, without realizing what anyone else wanted to do in the form of their offer, it was our idea to say that the waterfront needs to be more special than it is. And I'm remembering in '07 the fight over whether or not the library should come down or not, and the water feature coming up, and this idea of what happens. I remember there was a talk of kind of redesigning the seawall so that it could become more of a riprap and more of a biological edge. And these conversations are not new. They're conversations that are really important, but they're very much policy decisions. When we were here last time, we didn't recommend 5 stories on Flagler. We were told to stay away from Flagler because there was a referendum. So we had no comment on Flagler. So just to set the history correctly, we never addressed that first line of blocks before because we were specifically told we had no ability to influence that. There was already a vote by the population. This time, we were asked, well, now that the state has required its mandate, which you're going to get checked out again, what would you imagine? Well, what we imagine is what we know. We know that the most valuable property in a city is the first line of waterfront. We know that there's already buildings there, as Darius mentioned, that are 15 stories and 12 stories and 30 stories, and that you're seeing properties throughout the whole city coming in here that are even more developed and higher than the ones that we're commenting on 25 stories. So what we're saying is if this is inevitable, whether it's going to happen through variance or through political pressure or whatever, why don't we control the future, which is why we came up with this idea of, well, 25 stories is not 40. If we keep the towers thin, it's not going to block the entire line of sight from the waterfront. We're going to still see sky. We're going to be able to make sure that every single floor has liner buildings on it. We're setting it back 100 feet to make sure that the waterfront park actually continues across the entire frontage. And I just want you to know that this was the reasoning behind what we did, because it had nothing at all to do with the Palm Beach Post or the fight over the restaurant or any of that. It had to do with simply a very solid concept, which is if we're looking at the whole downtown, where's the most valuable property, where's going to be the pressure for development, and what's missing? And in our opinion, what was missing is a great park and great recreational opportunities. And I know that the city has been struggling with that now for decades. And that's part of a vision. The thing about a vision is it's not a code, it's an idea. So I just wanted you to have that history. The second thing I wanted to comment on is Brightline. Maybe because we're emotionally invested, we're the designers for the stations. We work with Brightline, we know the president, we've helped place the station in its location. So I can't comment on bankruptcy because I intuitively feel that when you have all this investment, it's not going to go away. But let's just pretend that it does go away. Let's take the worst case scenario. I think it's only reasonable to assume that there will be commuter rail in Palm Beach anyway, because it's being talked about in Broward, it's being talked about in Dade, it will happen in Palm Beach. As the city grows, there will be commuter rail because it's only logical that it happen. Plus, in this case, the infrastructure is already in place. The station already is there. So I can't promise, I'm not in a position, but I would not assume that Brightline's going away, and if Brightline does go away, someone else will come in. There will be some kind of commuter rail that services the East Coast, and I would be just shocked to think over time that it doesn't happen. There's too many people moving here. It doesn't make sense that it would just be abandoned. So I don't know if I've addressed all the issues, I'm sure I haven't, but I just wanted you to understand the background and the logic. There is a lot of flexibility built into the code. If you want more, we would be really anxious to hear from you in what way you would suggest that to happen. But keep in mind that the process we went through was directed at controlling private development in order to make sure we have the best public realm and allow the private developer to have flexibility and, in this case, even increased density and height to help the city grow, because eventually it'll either be controlled through this process or it'll be happening maybe more haphazardly through a political process. Yeah. But I don't think we can keep it from happening.
This is great discourse, but while you're here, let's ask a couple of questions. So back to the height issues. So maybe this question would be twofold, you're here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as an architect and an urban planner. So yeah, good, the most valuable property along Flagler, and I think it is now. And if you give them twice the FAR and 5 times the height, it's even more valuable. I think that's obvious. So two questions would be then, one, what do you think about, and I know we've had discussion about the perception of height and mass when you're walking through streets in the city and you look up at about 5 stories, 6 stories, and beyond that doesn't matter. But my concern more so is away from it on the Flagler Promenade looking into the city. Right. And are we doing a disservice by creating a wall of mass versus having the gradual transition? So that's number one comment. And then number two, if you had the blank slate, what would you be recommending for the Flagler waterfront relative to what
if I had a
know?
blank slate, that one's easy.
That's easier.
I like the European historical cities, you know, where you're very low on the waterfront and things gradually rise beyond, because it gives a deeper penetration into the city. That's not our situation, unfortunately, but that would be, if I had a blank slate and I was designing a city from scratch, that's probably how I would want to do it. I've yet to see any American city do that. I can't think of a single situation in that regard. The only time I have seen it is in historical cities where those properties are already protected. And they were the historical center of the city. And I think that maybe one of the comments is, looking at the West Palm waterfront, I'm a little bit hard-pressed to find that level of historicism or, you know, even architecturally significant buildings that would lead me to that. I think to your comment, with great designers coming and great projects coming, I think that the waterfront could be much more spectacular if we allow for some creativity and for some diversity to happen. But But, you know, the 2 blocks beyond, where we're trying to keep the height lower, because I know you commented, wouldn't it be better to keep it lower and let it go up? The issue is that those blocks have been the beneficiary of the last 20 years. So they're new buildings. It's not, in a practical sense, it's never going to happen. And if there are 1 or 2 blocks where that could happen and we allow it to go up, it'll be out of context and it might end up hurting the what I find to be a really kind of nice walkable environment from Quadrille East. Those streets have, those buildings are creative, they're diverse, they have a lot of character. There's been city investment in the little parks that were part of the code and the corners. I mean, when I walk around and I think about the code and I see the buildings, I think, you know, unlike most cities, you know, there's courtyards and special moments that people are required to put into their project in order to comply with the public open space, the semi-public open space. I mean, we really went at it back then. The private open space, I think it adds a lot of quality and peculiarity to each of the projects, which makes them more individual. So if we were to take those 2 blocks and force them, not force them, but allow them to come up higher, I mean, it'll be 20 years or so before anything happens, or maybe more, because there's a lot of new buildings there. And the new population that we're anticipating coming in the development of the inner core of the city, that's going to finally, I think, help Clematis and the other streets to the east of the rail have more population and have more development interest. I think the problem has been that with City Place and the development of City Place, it's really always been hard for Clematis to compete. And we need to find more people and more activities to make it happen. But I mean, listen, the way I started the presentation was this thought I had this morning driving up here, which is that, you know, if cities, because I think of cities more anthropomorphically, you know, to me they're like living bodies. And you can look at a plan and you can see where things are working, where things aren't going to work. You know, I mentioned kind of in jest that West Palm Beach is a trust fund baby city. You know, it's inherited, you know, wealth. And I think that the wealth that you inherited is really the natural environment and all this infrastructure. And now all this literal wealth that's surrounding you. You know, we just have to be diligent about focusing on the issues that you're bringing up. And I think we're ready to help if you can find another thought or you want us to investigate how do we deal with special circumstances. But I don't think there's a way to make this code kind of solve the special circumstances. The special circumstances are going to be based on something that doesn't fit within the parameters of what we've been thinking about. But to do it the other way would be a big mistake. We need to protect the public realm, make sure that these uses are active, that liners line garages, and where it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you know, unfortunately, you're the gatekeeper for that because that's the role you have. But I don't see it happening in the zoning code.
But to staff, the variance mechanism now won't change, correct? For waivers or variances? Or will it? Thank
we
you,
have
Bernard.
the existing provisions that we have in place. The only ones that are not allowed to request for variances are variances for increase in FAR and increase in height.
There are, based on what we have right now, we are not really making any changes for those variances that are allowed or not allowed.
So there's the same. I wanted to clarify one of the comments about the CDRs in terms of cap. It is the same that we have right now. So if you remember the maps that were shown, like all the areas that are eligible for incentives, each of those blocks have a maximum capacity. So a project could bring in to the site a specific amount of CDRs or TDRs, whatever it is. But it always has a maximum. It's the same that we have right now. In terms of the maximum, there are some areas where we are increasing the FAR allowed or the height, but there's always an established maximum. It's not open.
So which building is eligible to be the sending site? Let's say like TDR, the historic
For
designation.
historic,
For CDR and
yes, for historic buildings, there is a particular map and a list of buildings that are eligible for historic designation.
Right.
As we show, a lot of them have already been designated, and they have already transferred the TDRs. There are some that they have not, like the Trinity Church, they have not, is eligible for designation, they have not designated, they have not transferred the TDRs. They could do that and transfer and designate the building.
no, so the CDR is based on what to be eligible to be the sending site?
The CDR is basically just the city is selling the square footage because we don't have more TDRs. There are not going to be more historic buildings that we can transfer. So the city is selling that square footage in exchange for the benefits that we are proposing.
But the city is selling based on what property?
It's not a property base. It's just we are
It's just
producing,
whoever paid the $17 per square foot?
as long as it has that cap and as long as they provide the incentives. So that's why it's a benefit driven.
Okay, so my follow-up on that is, are their incentives stackable? Let's say somebody buy the CDR at $17 per square feet, and then they build affordable housings, and then like 100%, then they give like 20% of that to affordable workforce housing. Are they stackable? As long as it's capped by the maximum height?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's not that the incentives are stackable. You have a maximum capacity that you can build on a particular site with incentives and without incentives. That doesn't matter. It doesn't change. That's the maximum allowed.
I have one question regarding the landscaping. I know that's now the private property owner's responsibility, but how is the city enforcing that?
We have maintenance agreements that are signed before the building is CO.
Okay, what about buildings that exist now?
Those, we don't have it. So if buildings exist and were not built under this code or when we started to implement that, there's some provisions in the code that you are responsible for maintaining what is in front of you, like in the private property. If you have a house, you're responsible for maintaining the soil in front of your house. It's more difficult to enforce. It's in the code, but it's more difficult to enforce.
Okay, like how is the city now enforcing that? For example, in front of the Strand, they've got just big holes in the ground, no trees. How does the city enforce that?
The Strand is a good example.
Right.
So we go and talk with the property owner, code enforcement, talk with the management of the building and say, hey, there are some tree grades that are not maintained. You need to maintain it. The property owner or the manager of the building comes back and says, it's not our responsibility. And we say, well, yes, it is your responsibility. Here is the code. And we go back and forth and argue with them until they take care of it. It's their responsibility.
Do they go in front of code enforcement?
Code enforcement, yes.
Commercial
The code
buildings?
enforcement process, yes.
Okay. Is that, I'm just curious if you know, are they in front of code enforcement yet?
I don't know. I will have to check for that particular property. But I can tell you, we have been in discussions with them. I don't know what is the current status. But.
Okay, thank you.
Anna Maria, is staff comfortable with some of the issues that were raised today by, there's the Yacht Club Tower folks who want to get involved? Is that something that can get baked in later so we're not worried about that? Or is that something that we should be thinking about or pausing for? How does that come into play?
Well, the question is if the board is supportive of that. Then we can include it as part of the rezoning. We'll have to bring the rezoning of that parcel in front of you next month and then loop it together with the rest of the rezoning.
So that one can still kind of make its way into it. What about the concerns that were raised by Mr. First? Some of the issues with specific to the Nora district in the northwest section?
We are receiving comments from everybody.
Yeah.
So we are tracking them and having discussions for each of them. Again, some of them staff does not agree, and we'll have to have discussions, but not necessarily that means that the staff is recommending changes. If you have a particular one that you recommend changes about it, you can make it part of the recommendation, but it's part of that. We will present the full information.
My concern is more about if there's going to be an issue, because the right words were used, taking and blah,
All
blah,
right,
blah.
yeah,
And that's what
so-
I'm wondering, is there a legal ramification for us continuing, or is there something that we have to be thinking about here
Well,
in terms of
your
the-
vote today is a vote to recommend, and the legal issues that were brought up, I'm sure will be fully vetted, and staff will be prepared to answer those questions, as well as the city attorney, at the city commission. And I'll leave it at that.
So not for our purview, just,
Well, I was not asked to specifically address them. So I am not prepared to specifically address them today, but I know that the city attorney will be prepared. And I don't know, I'm very familiar with takings law, but I don't know enough about the facts of the interests of Mr. First's company and how the regulations impact them to knowledgeably discuss that.
it was just the
right now.
boundary of exposure. I'm not sure if it has nothing to do with us, and we have an understanding of it, but there's no extra exposure, fine, great.
But I guess this city explains the distinction was because those were all incentive-based.
Right.
So the question is there that intention to still downzone Nora?
I mean,
like they-
listen, first of all, I don't want to get into legal discussions on the record for something that the city attorney's office really hasn't been asked about yet. Very cognizant of people, of private rights as we go through this process. And any questions about those private rights will be examined prior to the discussion at City Commission. I don't think we can really address those at this point. I don't think there's any effort to take anything away from anybody.
Right, okay, I'm just trying to figure out, were they just collateral damage in
I
the
think their
DMP?
argument goes to their perceived impact on their private property rights versus possibly the actual impact of the regulations. I don't know.
And we can definitely work with them and understand exactly where they are seeing that.
Yeah.
Again, we're not changing the development capacity by right for any parcel of the downtown, and that's where the takings, it's based
Right.
on.
Oh, and Maria, the last part. And Bernard, thank you for the explanation of, sort of like DAC has to take care of those rough edges, and we have to be the ones to smooth that stuff over. But Claudia had raised the two things that are not negotiable for variances. And that's where I think we're opening the code up, not for everybody to have a free-for-all, but it's more a matter of recognizing now that maybe because we're entering into the era of towers, and like 20 years ago, it wasn't that. We might have 1 or 2 or 8, but now we've got tons. And so that's where I think we should be opening up the flexibility issue in terms of the height. Is height now the right time to be talking about having some kind of play or variance with it? Not for any one specific project, there are very few, but I guarantee you there's going to be more and more as things develop or projects come together, or there is a massing of sites. And all of a sudden, that flexibility might become very important to maintain the vision and still get them to where they need to get to for creative design, for whatever. So my opinion is the flexibility still should be there. And I think other people have said the same thing. Not trying to give anyone any favors, but it's never been open to negotiations because height has never been allowed a variance. So that's where that's my concern about the height thing.
The only caution that I would raise is the last one in wants the one that came before. So I think it would be prudent to establish a maximum height, because otherwise it'll be a never-ending game to game the height up. But if the board and the commission want to make change it from 25 to 30 or from 25 to 20, or we're not going to fall on that sword. I don't want to die on that sword. That is not our issue.
We don't want that either.
Right. But I would not, I think there should be some things that you could not change, because otherwise the development community will always be at you. Now, the things that could change are all the things that modulate the site. I think that's where variances could happen, but I would be reluctant to suggest that you could mess with maximums.
Yeah, maybe I would dovetail that. Perhaps maybe the liner, the active liner requirements and other things might be able to change. But I think,
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There are certain situations where
sacred.
maybe you don't have enough room and you have to make a choice. Do I have parking or do I have liners? But in those situations, you're probably not going to get to the maximum FAR because the maximum FAR was calculated with liners. So, you know, it's kind of almost like a vocabulary you have to learn, right? It's like, okay, if I'm going to give you some leeway here, I realize that you're going to lose something there, and you know, maybe it's better for what you desire in terms, because once that happens, you're really driving the end result of the project. It's up to the board. So I would just be reluctant to allow for flexibility on maximums, because it'll game up. I mean, I've seen it happen over and over.
Bernard, I have one question about the Flagler. The base is at 25, but with bonuses, what would that look like? Is that 35?
No, bonus is 25. The base is 5.
The base is 5, okay.
No, the base is 5.
Yes. Okay, so with bonuses, up to 25, you're saying?
Up to 25. And if somebody wants luxury product on the water, they may not want to do everything that requires the public benefit. So therefore, the public benefit requires them to pay, it requires them to do certain things that give back to the community, and the things that they're going to want to let go of will decrease their FAR. They will not hit the maximum FAR in towers. They're going to have to build liners, they're going to have to do other things. So it gives you leverage to negotiate the end result when special conditions come up, because they're not going to want to give up on the tower piece. The tower piece is defined. It has a maximum length, it has a maximum height. You're not going to be able to mess with that. You can change the shape all you want. The creativity is there. But in terms of hitting maximum FAR and maximum height, you're not going to be able to have all your maximum in the most profitable piece of the project. You're going to have to, you know, maybe at that point you'll get affordable housing in the base as a liner. You know, so you've got to keep that in mind. And the other thing I wanted to mention to you is we do this work a lot, and we find that our developers also do not love liners. What we do as architects often is we'll make the liner apartment 2 stories high. It doesn't have to, if you have 5 floors of garage, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have 5 floors of liners. You could make liners that are 2 stories high and have 2 floors of liners or 3 floors of liners. And you can also make them very wide. You know, we've designed apartments that are desirable 14, 16 feet deep by 40 feet wide. So if I want to minimize the number of units devoted to a liner so that I can maximize my units in the tower, you can manipulate liners also. So those are all tools for you if people want to negotiate, because, you know, everyone comes in saying they don't want certain aspects, but the aspects that they don't want are not the most highly profitable parts of the project, right? So they want to get rid of those and have more highly profitable parts of the project. So the idea is there's nothing wrong with profit, allow it, but don't give up on the active uses. There's always a way to get that in there so that you're avoiding blocks full of garage. So that's really what's behind the whole thing. So I don't know if I've been helpful, but I think that you have a lot of flexibility. And like you said, that's the rough edges. It's kind of your job. You got to deal with that. We can't deal with all the special situations.
Great. Thanks for the clarifications. Oh, Jessica.
You guys had a lot of questions about transportation, and I want to at least address some of them. Jessica Keller, Parking and Mobility Administrator, and I'm going to address the points that I heard in the order at which I heard them. First of all, I heard a lot of different perspectives just right up here, and you all have unique lived experiences, as do the people who are commenting from the public. I heard that we have gridlock. I heard we have plenty of capacity. I heard that there are too many cars on the road. I heard that no one's going to ride a bike when it's hot or when it's raining. But I also hear the other side of it. So the people who aren't here today telling me that I don't have a safe place to ride my bike with my family. I don't have good transit options. Those people weren't here today to communicate that to you. It's my job to deliver a balanced transportation system with a lot of options. My lived experience is very different as well. I do not leave my office at 5 o'clock. The reason I don't leave my office at 5 o'clock is because I'm going to be exiting a garage with everybody else who's choosing to leave at 5 o'clock. And that's just not worth it to me. So I decide I'm only going to leave at 5:30, and at 5:30, the road is empty. So there are very difficult 5 o'clock, I don't recommend anybody leave at 5 o'clock. There are difficult times to move around in the city, and it's in a very narrow window, and we are a car-dominated city at the moment. One of the things that I wanted to mention, we're going on 3.5 hours here, and if I were to have spoken about the mobility plan, the transportation system we're unrolling, and transportation demand management, we'd be here for another 3 hours, I assure you. I don't know the best way to give you and present to you the amount of detail that you can truly appreciate these different programs, and I encourage you to reach out to me so that I can provide you, I can set up appointments with you so you can fully understand. I wanted to talk about the city mobility plan briefly. The gentleman earlier spoke about the need for trees as part of the system, and you didn't hear about it. The mobility plan, all of our projects in the mobility plan, just about every single project that is infrastructure in the right-of-way includes shade trees. The mobility plan creates the structure to support the fee that is charged to developers when they build in this city. And when they are charged that fee, it goes directly into the infrastructure to support it. The capacity for all the different modes of transportation, the choices that people are asking us for, which does include shade trees, that's all part of it. We will certainly address the existing empty tree pits with the appropriate department. The transportation demand management explanation, there are so many choices, and I want to say that it is incredibly important that transportation demand management be required as part of the development of this city, because it addresses the concerns that people have associated with, well, what if everybody drives? With transportation demand management strategies in place, that shift happens. There are examples of it across the city, and we are going to be bringing to commission transportation demand management legislation this year. The scariest thing I heard today, and I might have misunderstood it, did you suggest free parking? I encourage you to read the book, The Price of Free Parking by Donald Shoup. It's quite informative. I have been the Parking and Mobility Administrator for 6 months. The administration didn't exist before 6 months ago. And my role is to manage congestion, and one of those tools is through parking and parking pricing. If you go, say you drive to Publix, not the one down here, because we all walk to that Publix, right? So you go to Publix, and when you drive to Publix, you have a free parking space. And the parking space you very likely choose is the one that's the closest to the front of the store. And not everybody can park the closest to the store. Now imagine if you start charging, I'm not suggesting you should, but it's now $1 to park close to the store. You're gonna start seeing people spread out, and they're gonna start choosing the less expensive parking spaces if they wanna save their dollar. And if you have free parking in the city, it's induced demand. Everyone's going to drive to the city, and they're going to fill up all the spaces, and they're not going to move. So if you come later in the day, you're not going to find a parking space. But that's a TED Talk, and I'm happy to explain it more. But I do encourage you to read the book, The Price of Free Parking, or look at the 20-minute video about that. Loading zones. That said, I'm a very open-minded person. And if you have an amazing idea that can make free parking work, I will listen to it. So I don't want to completely shut that down. I'm incredibly open-minded. Loading zones on Olive, that is also legislation that we plan on bringing forward this year. I've developed a strategic plan for the Parking and Mobility Administration, and that has been identified as a priority item in the next year. And then I want to talk about Brightline. Bernard mentioned Brightline as well. I agree with him that if Brightline were to go away, something will take its place. But one thing I do want to note is that while we know that Brightline is a valuable regional transportation option, when we were developing our mobility plan for the city, we didn't have the numbers from Brightline. Brightline's very protective of their ridership, and so we know along the entire corridor how many people they're transporting. We do not know how many people that they are picking up and dropping off here in the city of West Palm Beach, so a lot of that was assumed. But it is safe to say that, and been demonstrated by Tri-Rail, that people will shift from Brightline to Tri-Rail if the level of service is close to what it was with Brightline. If you have any other specific questions you'd like me to address, I'm happy to do so.
When you mentioned the Olive loading zones, it's subject to legislation. Is that to eliminate them?
So part of it is to help enforce it. But we have to identify throughout the city where loading zones should be. Looking at it more comprehensively than just looking at Olive, we're going to be taking a look at them across the city.
Is there any proposal to take some of the paid parking spaces and convert those to loading zones at all?
Well, to be clear, there are no proposals, but it's a project that we're working on in the next year, and I would be speaking way too soon to discuss what the proposals are.
Thank you.
Do you have, is there something?
Well, I was wondering how are we going to fix it? I don't see it in the DMP, and it seems to me, and I'm not an expert on parking, seems to me that maybe one proposal is getting rid of some of these parking spaces so the trucks can park in those spaces as loading zones. Maybe there's other solutions. I don't know.
Those are certainly options that will be explored. I'm just not really prepared to speak about Olive at this point in time. What I have identified is that we do have a loading zone issue in the downtown, and it's a priority.
Throughout the downtown, they just park wherever they want to park.
Yes, and it causes congestion. And there's, again, like as I mentioned, my job is to help manage the congestion, and we've identified the problem, and it's a priority item for this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Jessica right now? Okay. Thank you, Jessica. Okay. So where are we at? Does anyone else have any more questions or want to sort of close discussion and have a little executive commentary and formulate some sort of motion? Oh, Claudia, I'm sorry, did you have something?
No? That is the next steps. I just have a motion here in case you want it. I can put it on the screen too, in case you want it.
Oh, you know, I totally forgot. Can you do me a favor? Can you bring up the site plan for that loft and the group that was here wanting to extend that one zoning change just north of the,
Yes.
I just want to see graphically exactly where that is.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
would city
Yeah.
staff recommend that? I mean, was it even considered?
Yeah, was it consideration? And then number two, when you had group sessions with that neighborhood, was there any objection to the height of that building or any transition in height to the single-family zone?
We looked at it because it is a 4-story building. Obviously, we will not going to propose something that property owners will not be aware of. So we did not pursue that. I don't think the consultant or staff have any issues with it. It is a transition area to lower scale. We are just looking at the setbacks. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, I apologize.
Multitasking difficulties. Let me see if I'm able to put it on the map. The other way? Towards the end.
Yeah, there.
Okay.
That's it there. Yep.
Can you see
Next
my
one.
screen?
Next
Okay.
slide.
So this is one that we're rezoning.
There it is, right there. There's your little flag.
This other one right here is the other one we're rezoning. This is part of your DAC case number 2601. Right. The one north to it is the one that is the 917 North Flagler, the one that some property owners expressed that. Yes, that is correct. So that would be the other one that will convert to LD5, if you recommend that. And yes, we do have single family on this area, so we're looking at the setbacks towards that area.
Okay.
And
Good. That was my comment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's put a wrap on questions for staff and just got any discussion amongst anyone here or that would help inform a motion?
Mr.
Well,
Chair,
his question is-
which item are you going to vote on
Let's
first? So I
start
can.
in order. Which was the first
Okay.
one, 6201?
Well, on Lofton, should we try and maybe, consider that next month if they want to possibly consider adding in the other
Oh,
property?
yeah, that's for, I think that was, for next month.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you're good at motions. You're good at motions. Sorry. And my only component would be commentary before is just when they go back and restudy was just my commentary about the height and the Flagler Waterfront District and just reconsider some less than 25 stories, whether it's 10, whether it's 15, whether it's 18, whatever the professionals consider. That's my only commentary. I think otherwise they've done an amazing job with the details, addressing all of the issues that have been brought up over the last 20 years. So I commend them on their hard work. So thank you. And that's my only specific comment.
So would these be, I guess, because I had mentioned, can we do with recommendations?
Recommendations.
Like I don't recommend the 25% reduction in parking. So my recommendation, I don't know if there's a consensus on that, but I guess what we have to do is if we make a recommendation, it has to be that whether we have a majority vote for the recommendation.
You're going to vote as a board on these, whether you recommend to the city commission for approval or not.
Well, with conditions or
Yes,
specific
yes,
recommendations.
as staff has
With
presented
conditions. So
them
let's
to
make a list of conditions, and then whoever the motion maker is can include those conditions.
Okay. One, I would say as far as no 25% reduction in parking is what I'd propose. And I guess I was trying to consider a way to try and require that there be something consideration of commercial loading zones within the DMP. Maybe just that broad language, they consider it. I don't know if there's a way to recommend they consider the possible impact it may have on Nora and whether that's, at least, I don't know if that should be something we can recommend. Maybe that's something they can deal with on.
I recommend staff sort of needs to look at any collateral damage that would come up in terms of any projects that are either approved or ongoing based on the changes to the DMP.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
To address any currently approved or in situ projects that are affected by the changes that are being proposed by the DMPU.
If we have any developments that have been approved, they are vested. There's no change on that.
Well, I understand that, but at least we're just asking as far as there may be other projects within that same area that haven't yet been approved. Maybe there's, I think we're just generally saying that they should consider as far as whether there's any collateral damage caused by the Rise Master DMP to any other neighborhoods that were just unintended. So basically we don't wind up where the city winds up in a lawsuit.
So I think that the way that this should happen is you have the recommended, Claudia, unfortunately, I can't see that across this room, and it's not up there. So usually staff prepares a recommendation for the board. Now, what normally happens is somebody will make a motion to pass or not pass that recommendation that staff has written out. If the motion is not something the board wants to consider, or if a member of the board wants to make a friendly amendment to that motion, then that's where you can suggest that the motion contain whatever you want it to contain. But I would suggest you start out with the way staff has recommended it and move forward from there.
Right. Have you made your motion?
Okay.
You haven't made a motion, have you?
I'm trying to get whether there's any consensus as to anything else we want to put in here, so we don't all start making motions.
Are we on 2603?
Well, we're on both, actually, because both are being brought forward for recommendation of approval at the same time.
Well, you need to do one at a time.
Okay.
One at a time. So let's consider the first one.
Can we, Mr. Chair, do you mind if we get case 2601 off the side? Because I don't think anyone has any issues on the board for case 2601 with the Lofton District expansion.
Yeah.
Motion to approve,
That's, yeah, case 26-01.
So I move that the Downtown Action Committee recommend to the city, yeah, I got it. Thanks. I move that the Downtown Action Committee recommend to the City Commission approval of DAC case number 2601. A city-initiated request for the approval of the rezoning of the property located at 901 North Flagler Drive from the Providencia Park District Professional Office PPD-PO to the Lofton District 5 LD-5, and the property located at 807 North Flagler Drive from the Lofton District R LD-R to the Lofton District 5 LD-5 in the Downtown Master Plan DMP. The motion is based upon testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted in the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence. The board hereby makes findings of fact that each of the applicable criteria in section 9432 of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations have been met.
Okay. Motion second?
Second?
I'll second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Okay.
Now
Now-
we'll go forward to 2603.
Recommendation of approval. I move that the Downtown Action Committee recommend to the City of Commission.
I'm sorry, just let the record reflect that Mr. Grace is getting up, leaving the dais.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
He's just not walking fast enough. I move that the Downtown Action Committee recommend to the City Commission approval of code revision case number 26-2603, a city-initiated request for the approval of the text amendment to Chapter 94, Zoning and Land Development Regulations, Article 4, Downtown Master Plan Urban Regulations. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent, substantial evidence. The board hereby makes finding of fact that each of the applicable criteria in section 9432 of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations have been met. And I would like to open this to allow for additional conditions.
We have a motion. We'll have some discussion, then we can add on any one specific language for recommendations to the commission and to the planning board.
Right. I think that'd be the read only if conditions are imposed part. All right. Okay. So I propose one condition is they not approve the 25% reduction in parking. As a condition. So now we separately, you want me to read that and then add that at the end?
Yes, please.
Okay. In addition, the recommendation is made subject to the following condition of approval that condition number, I'm not sure how we're.
Condition number one.
Number one, okay. Okay, is imposed to read as follows. Okay. that there not be a 25% reduction in parking. I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistency with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach.
In addition,
Yep.
I would, in addition, I would like to review the flexibility issue, and I would like to add language that basically allows for flexibility in height or in property configuration to allow the designers to do what they need to do to create this wonderful waterfront view. I'd like to see this condition put in place in terms of either staff working with applicants to come up with some resolution to where they think there should be some flexibility in some kind of swash zone. I don't want to fall into what Bernard indicated, that we're just going to go down the spiral of just additional height and everyone's going to be jamming for 30 stories. It's more a matter of when we have tight sites, or it can be proven that we have constraints, that there could be some flexibility built into the code now that would allow people sort of a relief valve. So I would like to add language or a condition that says
Isn't that kind of inherently built into the?
No, because they're for height.
Oh, you want height?
There's no variance for height in the regulations. I'd like to see flexibility built into the DMP as we move forward over the next 20 years.
So just height, not FAR?
No, just height.
Just height.
No one needs to have more because they can't get to the FAR now. I think height will help people reorganize the ground level space that Bernard and the staff are very concerned about, and I agree with. You have to have that streetscape, but at the same time, we have to have a little bit of movement up and down and allow for the designers to do what they need to do, especially if we want to have this vision of not having monolithic towers. So flexibility of a range of flexibility that staff will work with.
Okay, and I don't have a problem with that for the purpose of the fact that we're not the ones that are making the decision. I just say let them consider everything, because I don't necessarily support adding height, but let them consider the whole thing.
Right.
That's would be my view.
So flexibility language.
All right, so far your conditions are greater flexibility and no 25% in reduction of parking.
And I would add one, unless.
I'm just going to finish that. In addition, this recommendation is made subject to the condition, to the following condition of approval, that condition number 2 is imposed to read as follows. As I said, flexibility language built into the DMP, and staff working with applicants to come up with some arrangement or some kind of allowable percentage of the zoning and land development regulations in consistency with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach.
Okay. And then my recommendation was going forward was for the consultants and the professionals and staff to study in the Flagler Waterfront District a lesser number of stories. And that number would be determined by the professionals, but to create more of a transition from the public realm into the dense urban core.
My condition to add would be to increase the permit fee for landscaping or have an impact fee associated with these new developments to fund the landscaping in the public realm or the maintenance if the maintenance budgets are substandard now.
I would like to make one recommendation to take under consideration additional avenues on how to alleviate the traffic congestions, what other flexibility, whatever other opportunities are available to resolve this issue long term.
You guys are keeping track of these? Okay.
Okay, Kim?
They're going to be part of the main motion. Okay.
Kim, did you?
Yes, my condition is that the DAC be provided an independent legal opinion, that the referendum which limits the height on Flagler has legally been overridden by state legislation.
The only question I have is that when you say independent, we're not requiring that they hire outside counsel, are we?
Yes, I think that's more proper because the city attorney, with all due respect, I mean, I think for due process, I think an independent opinion outside that not made by staff within the city would be I think would be more proper, and I think a lot of the newspapers with all the public trust issues and other thing that to make the residents. I think it's not just the resident feeling, but it's a legal due process to have an independent opinion.
As much, I'm a lawyer, and as much as other lawyers want to make money, maybe we make that discretionary because it might be expensive to hire
I think
outside
the
counsel.
expense is worth it for this momentous change.
We will pass that recommendation along.
Okay.
Any other commentary or conditions or recommendations or?
Okay, so let's, I'm sorry. When you get to the end and everybody's made their friendly amendments, and let's go down the list, make sure we have what they are, and then go forward.
Okay, let's do it. You want to take over, Brian?
Yeah, thanks. So the add-ons are, did you want me to read the whole thing again, or do you want me to just do the
Yes, I
add-on?
think you should, to make sure you have them all, because it's important.
Okay. If I misstate anything, just go ahead and jump in, and because I wrote as fast as I could. From the beginning, I move that the Downtown Action Committee recommend approval of Code Revision Case Number 26-03, a city-initiated request for the approval of text amendment to Chapter 94, Zoning and Land Development Regulations, Article 4, Downtown Master Plan Urban Regulations. The motion is based upon the testimony presented at the hearing, along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent, substantial evidence. The board hereby makes findings of fact that each of the applicable criteria in Section 94-32 of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations have been met. In addition, this recommendation is made subject to the following conditions of approval: that condition number 1, do not impose 25% parking reduction within this legislation. 2, flexibility language is built into the code regarding height within the DMP. 3, the lesser number of stories is implemented along the Flagler District waterfront district. 4, increase the impact fee for landscaping to allow for additional funding for street level improvements. 5, traffic flexibility with alternate transportation modes worked into the DMP for guarantees, or I'm not sure what the specific.
More specifically, when they're looking at the project as a whole, to make sure that all these new technicalities aren't going to create more congestion long-term.
Got it. So just to repeat that one, traffic flexibility with analysis as a whole to the DMP, so that we're not creating any specific problems or choke points. 6, DAC be provided an independent opinion of the height issue as has been legislated.
That the state legislation overrode the referendum.
Right. So
to confirm, that's
Right.
opinion.
to confirm. So
Yeah.
to confirm, the state override. Of the
Referendum.
city referendum.
I'm not sure it's legislation. For some reason, I thought it was a constitutional issue, so I guess they'll have to just figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We'll work it out, we'll work it out. Are imposed to read as follows. I read them. I move that these conditions are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistency with the comprehensive plan of the city of West Palm Beach.
Okay. There's a motion with conditions.
We sort of made the motion together kind of thing. I guess he took over, so I'll second it.
Okay,
I'll
motion,
second.
and then there's a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, thanks, all you guys, for all your hard work. Much appreciated. Thank you.
You
Okay.
didn't think you're gonna walk
Thank you
out.
very much for your patience.
You didn't think you're gonna walk out of here without nothing. Come on.
Does anyone have any unfinished business or any other business?
Anne Marie, I did have one quick question. I'm sorry. For under other business, Are there any updates to Howard Park and the improvements to Howard Park? I remember we approved that a long time ago, and I thought construction was supposed to start last year, and I just haven't seen anything over there. Is there any updates?
I believe you are talking about the community center. I believe they are moving forward. I can find out for you.
Okay,
I don't know exactly where they are on this tape, but I think they are moving forward with that.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have any other items? Okay, if not, we'll adjourn today's meeting. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.